يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Salam and good day. A few days ago, I got a heads up by Eddie of the Dean Show that my name has been mentioned in Hyde Park Speaker's Corner by a non-Muslim who claims that there are 10 Qurans. And I was invited to comment on Dean Show on a video of this man speaking to Sneeko, an influencer who converted recently to Islam. But I saw in this man sincerity from the way he raises the questions. And I invited him to call me if he can, so that I can clarify the ambiguity of this topic, which many non-Arab speaking Muslims, not just non-Muslims, don't understand as well, which is the topic of the Qira'at, Ahruf, stuff like that. And here we are tonight. I have Chris of Speaker's Corner. So thank you, Chris, for calling me. And in the beginning, my intention was not to meet with you on camera, just between ourselves, but you chose that this be public, and I am okay with that too, because I am in love with the Qira'at, as I said on Dean Show, and I always say that. I always say even that if I were not a Muslim and I studied all what I have studied in Islam, probably the Qira'at would be the point that attracts me to embrace Islam. I was telling you before we go online that I don't go to Speaker's Corner because I'm not into shouting matches, and I only participate in civilized discussions where people do not interrupt each other. First of all, let me introduce myself to people who are who do not know me. Number one, I am Fadel Soliman. I am not a scholar. I'm a student of knowledge. I hold a master's degree in Sharia, and I studied the Qira'at. And I hold an ijaza, which is a permit to recite and teach the Qira'ah of Warsh with a continuous chain of narration to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But I studied all of the Qira'at, but I didn't have time and energy except to narrate one Qira'ah, which is Warsh. This will be, inshallah, a civilized discussion where we will ask each other questions and allow each other to answer without interruption. I'm sure Chris understands that raising a misconception or a controversial question is easy, but to answer it properly in a way that does justice to the topic needs time and needs concentration. So I may need some time in some answers. My intention is not to debate, but to learn. When truth seekers talk, they do not focus on winning, but on finding the truth. And I was telling him, by the way, online before we go online, that Imam Shafi'i said, I never debated with someone except if I pray that God makes the truth flow on his tongue. Definitely, it feels good to be right. But when you find that you are wrong, then that means that you learn something new. And I hope that we both learn new things. And the Quran told us to be objective, by the way. There is a chapter called The Cave, which Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, asked us to read once a week. I ask myself, why would he ask us to read it regularly like that? Is it for the blessings in it? Well, I don't think so, because the whole Quran is a blessing. So if it was about the blessing, he could have told us or commanded us to choose one surah and read it every week. But since he assigned a surah particularly, then definitely this means that there are some meanings in this surah that should be renewed in the heart of the human being at least once a week. And one of these meanings is objectivity. One has to be objective. Follow the evidence wherever it takes you. The young people who fled their homes to preserve their religion, which is the first story in Surah Al-Kahf, or the cave chapter, they wanted to avoid persecution and oppression in religion and protect their religion. So they said what? They said, هؤلاء قومنا اتخذوا من دونه آلهة لولا يأتون عليهم بسلطان بين. These our people have taken for themselves gods apart from him, from God. If only they would come forth with a clear manifestation of them. What does that mean? It means that the Quran is telling you, if there is evidence that proves the genuineness of other gods besides God, go ahead and worship them. So follow the evidence always. This is the objectivity of the Quran. Prophet Muhammad himself was commanded by God in the Quran, in Surah Al-Zukhruf, before meeting with the Christians of Najran, he was told, قل, say, إن كان للرحمن ولد فأنا أول العابدين. If the All-Merciful had a child, I would be the first of worshippers. Which means what? I will leave Islam, because you cannot worship someone else with God, or you cannot say that there is a son of God in Islam. So it means that if it's proven that there is a son for God, leave and go there. That's what the Quran itself tells you. So, Chris, I want to welcome you again, and you have the microphone. Please introduce yourself and shoot.
Sure thing. Well, I just want to say thank you very much, Fadel, for having me on to have this chat. I'm very much looking forward to this. I'm glad that we could set this up and have this and actually and do it. It's amazing. I wanted to first say, I saw the video you did on the Dean show, and you said you'd love to speak with me. So I thought, hey, it'd be a great opportunity to reach out to you. I had some Christians and a few Muslims actually message me saying, you should go talk to him. And I was like, yeah, that'd be a good idea. I'm obviously someone who is familiar with some of your work, predominantly the British translation of the 10 Qira'at of the Noble Quran. This is something that I got from your website. I have a PDF copy of it along with the app on my phone, which I often bring to Speaker's Corner. And what I really appreciate about you in particular is you're someone who wasn't afraid to do this, to take the Qira'at and to make English translations, because I don't know Arabic. I'm not studying Arabic at all. So I wouldn't really have an easy access to this if it wasn't for your work. Thanks to your work, I can actually easily reference this and say, okay, in one reading it has this, one reading it has this. And it makes it clear to English native speakers, which has been a big help. So thank you very much for that. You're obviously very sincere in your beliefs. You're not afraid of acting on those beliefs and putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak, and following your convictions. And I appreciate that very much about you. And yeah, this chat, I wanted to just go over some things, maybe perhaps starting with that clip of me speaking to Sneeko, because obviously I had this chat with Sneeko at Speaker's Corner. You were commenting about it on the Dean show. And I think maybe just starting there would be a really good place. And from that, we can sort of take it further, right? So when I was at Speaker's Corner on March 17th, I happened to bump into Sneeko. I recognized him because I've seen him online. I've seen the things he's put out regarding Islam, because he does make some Islamic content now that he's become a Muslim roughly about a year ago, I think. Yeah. And I wanted to ask him some questions because there's a worrying trend, and I think you may have noticed this as well, Fadel, that there are some Muslims in the Ummah who are not familiar with the other recitations besides Hafs. They have this idea of, I think, what you might call Hafs normativity, that there's just one reading and it's just this one. It's the one that most Muslims in the world have. About 95% of the Muslims in the world have the Hafs reading, and I've never read, or perhaps even not even familiar about the different readings that are available, the other 9 that are valid by Islamic scholarship. And I mean, it got to the point where I heard a father tell his son actually that there is only one reading of the Quran. There's only one, and it's this one. And I thought, well, that's not technically true. I mean, there's meant to be the 10 Qira'at, and I wish that father would tell his son about that one day, so he would be knowledgeable in this. I'm for objectivity. I'm for finding the truth wherever truth leads. I think that's a really important virtue. And I'm glad you also believe this too, Fadel. I think that's great. We can share common ground there. So from my point of view then, when I was talking to Sneeko, I wanted to make him aware of these different Qira'at in case he hadn't learned about it before. And he said he hadn't heard this before. I want to make the point that I'm not arguing against preservation as such. I'm not saying that you cannot say the Quran is preserved because of the Qira'at. That's not my point. I think you can make an argument that the Quran is preserved in very similar ways that you can for the Bible, for example. But I would say that anyone who thinks that the Quran is perfectly preserved, and by that I mean letter for letter, word for word, dot for dot, halakha for halakha, that particular perspective, I think, is flawed. And I think that isn't true. And in the quest for objectivity, you might say, I would like Muslims to know this, so that they do not repeat this because I think it is an error. And there are scholars who repeat this. Yasser Qadi has made this point, for example, that he thinks the Quran is perfectly preserved, letter for letter, dot for dot. There's some others as well. And I think it's best, for the sake of the Ummah and for the sake of objectivity, to clarify this, that you can say the Quran is preserved, but to say that it's perfectly preserved, as in the text is perfectly preserved, I think is an error. Do you want to come back to that?
Okay, thank you.
Have some thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Number one, no, the Quran is preserved, word for word, letter for letter, not because Muslims did a good job preserving it, but because God did not give the responsibility of preserving the Quran to any human being. He said, I am the one who descended al-dhikr, and I am the one who is preserving it. So he preserved it, not like other scriptures that, for example, we also have an ayah in the Quran that says, that talks about the rabbis who were supposed to preserve the Torah, which is the book of Moses, but they did not. And the Quran is full of criticism to their ways of changing things in their book. But what Muslims did actually a good job is when the Quran descended fully and Prophet Muhammad gave it to them very soon after his death. They started collecting the parchments, because at that time it wasn't written on in a form of a book, but it was on parchments and stuff. They collected it. They did a committee, and they chose a young scholar of the Quran, so that he's not stubborn. He is someone who's flexible, and he will be energetic. And this committee collected all the parchments and made it in a form of a book, and they kept it in the house of Hafsa, one of the mothers of the believers. And in the time of the third caliph, when the Muslim state became so big, and many new areas entered Islam, like Iraq, like the Levant, and so on, and Egypt. So he wanted to distribute copies. So the same people, okay, by the way, one of those people is my great-grandfather, Abdullah ibn Zubair ibn al-Awwam, who is considered one of the 4 Abduls, or the 4 biggest scholars of the Quran, called Abdullah ibn Zubair ibn al-Awwam. Yeah, he's my third.
You actually have like a relation.
Yeah, he's my 34th grandfather, actually. And so this committee copied the Quran and sent it to the different states at that time. That's the good thing that Muslims did. But even if they didn't do that, Allah told us that He is going to preserve the Quran, and it is preserved. If people go and change the Quran, it doesn't matter. Still, Allah is preserving it somehow. By the way, it is preserved in the chests of over 9 million children in the world today. They know it by heart, in Hafs narration and in Warsh narration and in many narrations. But the problem here comes when we are in Europe and in places where the Muslims are non-Arab speaking people, and this matter of Qira'at and Ahruf and stuff like that is a linguistic matter. It is very hard to explain it to a non-Arab speaking person. So most of them were not even told about that. And many of them thought that it's only Hafs, and many of them also thought it's only Warsh. And then they find that sometimes they read differently, but at the end, it's all from the Quran. And it's an amazing phenomenon in the Quran, because you know that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenged the polytheists with the Quran, and the Arabs at that time had amazing speakers who give amazing speeches that can move armies. and people fight each other because of a fiery speech, or they have also very good poets at the same time, amazing poets. And mainly there, they used to contest in poetry. And Allah challenged them to bring a Quran like that. They couldn't. They were given a discount. 10 surahs. They couldn't. More discount. 1 surah. They couldn't. But even, you know what? A surah is only like 10 words. The issue is they did not even dare to accept the challenge. And this is what many people don't understand. The miracle of the Quran is not eloquence. Eloquence is unmeasurable. And God is not going to challenge people with something unmeasurable. They heard something that they couldn't fathom. It is using the same letter set and the same words, but in a very different way. To the extent that if I use this style outside the Quran, it doesn't make any sense. It's even painful on the ear. But if I use it in the Quran, it sounds good and it's acceptable. And I gave an example in the Deen show regarding that. I used one of the ayat of the Quran, and if you want, I can read it also now, and read it outside the Quran and inside the Quran, and see that it's unfathomable. It's unbearable outside the Quran, because this is not how people speak. So the Quran is like a third style. At that time, when the Quran descended, there was only 2 styles: prose and poetry. Now, Arabic language has 3 styles: prose, poetry, and Quran. Quran is a unique style. It renewed the language. It used forms that were never used before and cannot be used in poetry or in prose. If not in the Quran, they don't sound good. That's amazing. So that's the issue. It's a linguistic issue, and that's why many non-Arab speaking Muslims did not know. But what I thought when I came here 10 years ago, I thought that no, it is the right. It's a human right. It is the right of people to know how their Lord spoke. So I believe in something called tadabbur beyond Arabic. Tadabbur means pondering, and I believe that the Quran can be pondered even from a good translation. And I chose the best translation at that time, and I started in East London Mosque pondering one of the surahs, Surah An-Nur. And I was able to find out what exactly is making, or what are the obstacles that are facing the pondering in English language. So I decided to make a new translation that respects the style of God in speech. I want to give you another example. And I'm sure if you read my book, you have seen that. God spoke about the hereafter over 500 times in the Quran in past tense.
Yep.
Past tense. Well, all translations made it future tense. And when I asked them, why did you do so? They said, what do you want us to do? The English reader will find it awkward. I'm sorry, but even in Arabic, past tense never denotes future. And this made Arabs ponder, why is God speaking like that? And then we found amazing stuff. You know, God has 99 names. One of them is the first, and one of them is the last. He is the first without a beginning, and he is the last without an end. What does that mean? It means that he is not inside time. God is outside time. So the hereafter, Judgment Day, is a future event, definitely, for me and for Chris and for our audience, but not for God. God doesn't have future. God is outside time. So when he spoke about our future, he spoke in past tense. This is mind-blowing. So this book, this translation, is not only about translating what God meant to say. No, it's also about translating the style of God in speech. Okay, so yeah.
You raised quite a lot there. I definitely agree. That example you used as well. I find that fascinating that he does speak in past tense, meaning the future tense. I do find that interesting. And you also gave another one in the interview. You talked about how you refused to translate the Arabic ayah for sign to mean verse. You said no, we keep it as ayah, like meaning sign, and that's an interesting point as well.
Sin. I think it's a sin.
Yeah, you said it was a sin. Yeah.
Sign. I'm sorry to call it verse, because verse is a unit of text in poetry, and one of the misconceptions on the Quran is that it is poetry. It's not poetry. So how come you use the word verse for a unit of text of the Quran?
So what I like as well is you don't shy away from the idea that in the Qira'at, the 10 authentic Qira'ats that scholars have affirmed, that they are places in which the meaning is different. So there's also a lot of places where it is just pronunciation. There are a lot of places where it's not really that much of a big deal in terms of how you switch it, but there is places where there is a substantial point in meaning difference. You gave some examples. I mean, in the video with Sneeko, I gave the classic one of Salah Fatiha, Maliki al-Medin and Maliki al-Medin, and that as king and owner, and they're technically two different words, so there is a changing meaning. Which is something I like about your book, because it illustrates this. And again, many Muslims aren't aware of this. There are many Muslims that I've spoken to, both online, both my friends, and also mostly at Speaker's Corner, who will say that the Qira'at is nothing but dialects. It is just purely pronunciation issues. It's potato, tomato, tomato, these kind of words, right? Like pants or trousers for the British, these kind of differences. But I think it's important that we do know there is a change in meaning, and it is a substantial one, because it is a different meaning. And having that readily at our fingertips and being able to show that, I think, is quite important. So with that being said, I would say that let's put it this way. One of the things you said that interested me is you said the Aruf is just dialects. So you made a distinction between the Qira'at and the Aruf, and you said, yes, the Qira'at can have its different recitations, and yes, there can be different meanings in some places. The Aruf, however, that we know it was revealed in 7 different modes or 7 different ways. That is just dialects. And then you said it was abrogated by Muhammad. I'm interested. Did you misspeak when you said it was abrogated by Muhammad, or is that your actual position? You think the Aruf was abrogated by Muhammad?
Good. Okay. Would you like me to respond now? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, you raised 2 different things, Ahruf and Qira'at, and those are 2 separate things, completely separate. And I'll tell you why. If we have 10 Qira'at, because one of the things you said to Sneeko is that there is 10 Qur'ans, because there is 10 Qira'at. Well, let me give you more than that. Every Qari gave 2 narrators, 2 different narrators. So for example, Hafs took from Asim. So the Qari is Asim. That's the Qari. And he has 2 main students, Asim and Shu'bah. Nafi' has 2 other students, Warsh and Qalun. Warsh is very close to Shu'bah and Asim. And Qalun and Nafi' is very close to Hafs and Asim. So for your info, the 10 Qaris had about 20 narrators. So you could have told him there is 20 Qur'ans also, by the way, but there isn't. It's only one Qur'an that encloses these Qira'at, which 30% of its variations are not performance. They affect the meaning so much. Meanings become completely different, but not one contradiction between any of them. And that's very important. But let me continue. Okay, so this is very important. So when we say that we have 10 qira'at or 20 narrations for the Quran, this doesn't mean that we have 10 or 20 Qur'ans. We have one that because if an ayah has 2 different qira'at or 3 different qira'at, some ayat, which is the maximum, can have 4 different qira'at in one ayah. And I can give you an example, by the way. This means that the meaning of the ayah is the collective meaning of the 4 qira'at together. And when you put them, it's like putting layers of meanings above each other that become clearer and clearer until the ayah become vivid, becomes so it's like high what do you call this, high definition. For example, we know that Pharaoh told his assistants that he will kill Moses. So he told them, let me kill Moses, which means start spreading the word that so that the public would accept the atrocities that he will do. And then the ayah ended and the surah ended without him killing Moses. But nothing tells us why didn't he kill Moses as he said. The Qira'at tells us. Because he said, ذروني أقتل موسى إني أخاف أن يبدل دينكم أو أن يظهر في الأرض الفساد. Let me kill Moses. I'm afraid that he will change your religion or he will make mischief appear on earth. There's another qira'ah. And he will make mischief appear on earth. There's another qira'ah. I'm afraid that he will change your religion or mischief will appear on earth, but not necessarily from Moses. And the fourth qira'ah, I'm afraid that he will change your religion and mischief will appear on earth instead of or. So this means what? That when he said so, that was a long meeting with his assistants and they studied every single alternative or every single probability that can happen because of killing Moses. And they came up to a decision that no, this man should be debated in public, not killed, not made martyr. You understand me? So this is the beauty of the Qira'at. It's like the ayah starts moving, you see, and you can see that with a change of a diacritic mark or a hamza or stuff like that, you saved adding a whole page to the Quran, and instead of being concise and able to be memorized easily and stuff, it becomes too long and too, or maybe boring. You understand me? So this is when it's about the Qira'at, but the ahruf is something different. When I said that the ahruf are dialects, that's the opinion that I adopt. There are many opinions about the ahruf. And this can be also a misconception. Why Muslims don't know what the ahruf are? Anything abrogated, you will not find Muslims knowing what it is because it's abrogated. And I will explain this to you now. But because the concept of abrogation is also a huge concept, by the way. But the ahruf, there is several, maybe about 20 opinions about it. Maybe the most sounding opinions is the one that I said, it's dialects. And there's another one which is synonyms. Like, come here in Arabic can be halumma or ta'ala or aqbil. All of these are Arabic words that are used today. You know, if I tell someone in Egypt, halumma, what's going to happen? If the whole street will fall on its back, cracking. What is this guy saying? He speaks like Iraqis. You understand me? So it's like, it's unacceptable. We don't use that. We use ta'ala. We don't use halumma, but halumma is used in a neighboring country. That's what the Arab world is, not a one homogeneous when it comes to the language. No. So one of the opinions is that it's synonyms like that. The hadith is very clear, and I have the hadith. I think I have the hadith ready to show it to you and to the people because it's very important to show them this hadith. Bismillah.
Yeah, if you have it.
Yes, I have it. I'm bringing it. I'm bringing it.
I was wondering as well, could you give me if I want to show something, could I bring it up as well? If that's good.
How can we do that? Can you add something? I don't think the guest
I can.
But tell me what
I can do it here, and you have to bring it up.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, you know, at the bottom of the screen, it'll appear at the bottom of the screen, and then you click on it, and it will come up on the screen.
Oh, that's very good. That's perfect. Okay. Let me now first show the this. Why is it showing? Subhanallah.
So you go to present, and then you find what it is you want to present. And then is it at the bottom? And you have to click on it to bring it up.
Okay, I should remove this from the studio and add this. I have to add this to the studio. How do they add this to the studio? Oh,
You should click on it.
yeah, I'm doing that, but new layout. Maybe, yeah, new layout, maybe. Oh yeah.
No, not the layouts. So you see where I am at the bottom of the screen, hopefully.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually better. I think this is probably a good.
Maybe I should
nice
remove you
layout.
to bring it first. One moment. Okay, one moment. Let me see what I can do here. Strange, man. One moment. Ahruf. Subhanallah. Oh, that's very strange. It was working, and I tried it before we start. There must be a way to present.
So if you're doing hadith, if you tell me the hadith, and if it's something I can find easily, I could find it and then present it for you.
You know, it's very. It's the hadith about the ahruf.
Yep.
Let me see what I can do. Because I have it here in the studio, but it's not adding. Previous slide. One moment. Just give me a second, guys. Subhanallah. Share screen. Video file. Slides.
So
okay,
what do you want?
I have it here also.
Share screen?
No, but I can. Yeah, I don't. No, it's not a share screen. I don't know how to. I know I can share screen, but I don't have it actually. Yeah, maybe I can do that. One moment. Maybe I can do share screen then. I just have to bring the hadith itself. It's called Ahruf here. Okay. And let me do share screen now. Share screen. Okay, well, this will be hectic every time, but anyway. Where's the... No, a window. Okay, here. Share. Yeah. Can you see this, guys? The hadith, I hope it appears, huh? Does it appear?
No, not yet. You may have added it. Is it at the bottom of your screen now?
No, I just said share screen. So now I said stop sharing.
No, we don't see it yet.
It's not at the bottom of this. Okay. Let me see with the comments. Can't you see it? You can send them a link, brother. Okay. I will just read the hadith then. Okay. Let me read the hadith and tell you what it says. It's narrated by Ubay ibn Ka'b, and it's a hadith sahih, which means it's an authentic hadith. The messenger of Allah met Jibreel and said, "Oh Jibreel, I have been sent to an illiterate nation, among whom are the elderly woman, the old man, the boy and the girl, and the man who cannot read a book at all." He said, "Oh Muhammad, indeed, Quran was revealed in 7 ahruf, so don't worry." In another narration, he added, every harf is shaf and kaf, healing and sufficient. This is very important. Every harf of them is healing and sufficient, which means that any harf of them is the Quran. You understand me? That's why I'm saying that the Qira'at existed in every harf as well. And it's Prophet Muhammad who was worried that the Quran would not be accepted by the less educated people in the different tribes of Arabia, especially that Arabs are sometimes too bigoted against each other. And by the time before he died, because he used to present the whole Quran for Jibreel once a year in Ramadan. The last year he presented it twice in the presence of the scholars of the Quran among the Sahaba, among the companions, and he presented it twice in one harf Quraysh. So he is the one who asked for more ahruf, and before his death, he abrogated 6 of them because it's not needed, because the hadith says every harf is kaf and shaf is sufficient. So every harf of them is the Quran. Understand me? Nothing is lost. Nothing is lost. It was, whether it's dialect, whether it's synonyms, the one of Quraysh is acceptable by everyone, because actually maybe the Prophet ﷺ was too worried, but Quraysh was always accepted by all the tribes in Arabia because they were the custodians of the Kaaba. And even before Islam, those people did not consider themselves pagans. They didn't say we're pagans, but they used to claim that they are following Ibrahim, Prophet Ibrahim. But they were actually worshiping idols as well. But they had Hajj, they had pilgrimage to Mecca. So still, Quraysh was very respectable, and the Prophet saw that he doesn't need it anymore. He abrogated 6, and there only stayed 1 harf with all the Qira'at.
So just to add to this, well, to challenge it maybe, because I would wonder, where are you getting the idea that he abrogated it from in this surah? Because as far as I understand, there isn't a part of the sunnah that explicitly mentions that Muhammad abrogated the aruf.
No.
Because
it is said that the Prophet ﷺ presented the Quran twice for Jibreel, and in one harf. It was in one harf. He did not present it in
Does
several
he say that
harf.
explicitly? Does it say only in one half?
Definitely in Harf Quraysh. It is there in Harf Quraysh. I just have to search and find it for you, but it's in Harf Quraysh. 1 harf.
It actually says that in the hadith or the narration.
Yeah, I will find it for you, but not now. Now I don't have it in mind.
Okay.
But anyway, the same Sahaba who attended the last presentation are the same Sahaba who collected it after a few weeks in Harf Quraysh. That's it.
Okay, yeah, I guess that raises the question as to what was the intended purpose from Allah of revealing the Quran in 7 different modes if it will be abrogated in such a short period of time.
To make it easy for people, and at the end, Allah knows everything. Allah knows that it's gonna be abrogated. So for Allah, that's not a problem. It's only that it was a worry that the Prophet worried about, and he himself didn't worry about it anymore. It's acceptable. Quran is flowing easily. Many people became memorizers. That's fine. He doesn't need that anymore.
Just to say, if the al-aruf is just dialects or synonyms, it is still a recitation from Muhammad, who got it from Jibreel, who gets it from Allah.
Yes, of course.
And my understanding would be that the companions would not leave things that they were told was Quran. As you said, all this al-aruf is Quran. Every half is Quran. So would the companions, why would they have abandoned this? It seems as if they wouldn't.
Exactly. The companions would never do something like that except if the Prophet did it himself or allowed it. The companions were even afraid of collecting the Quran in a form of a book because he didn't command it. And then they used their intellect and they said, no, this is definitely better. And they took the decision. So do you think that people were afraid just to collect it in a form of a book would take their decision to remove 6? Why remove them? Why not keep them all?
Well, you see, what I've been reading from scholars like Dr. Yasser Qadi is that there is a debate over the aruf and whether or not the aruf is still around today. There's a question over what the aruf is, and there are different opinions. Dr. Yasser Qadi gives 12 of them, and he highlights 3 of them as being good contenders for what aruf is. One is dialects, although he admits it's difficult because dialects to whom? Like you got the Quraysh, you may have like a tribe in Yemen, but there's no scholarly consensus.
All those, and they speak very differently.
There's no consensus over which 7 tribes this is referring to. So for that reason, it seems odd that, for example, the oral tradition wouldn't preserve that knowledge. Why would the companions not know if this was dialects into which tribe? Why would that not be preserved? Why would that not be
because it's abrogated?
In the Sunnah?
Anything abrogated. Okay, in the Quran there is something called abrogation. Yeah. Abrogation can be verbal abrogation or meaning abrogation. For example, the alcohol, wine, was made haram, was made prohibited gradually. So there are signs in the Quran that tell us that not to drink much before, not to drink before praying.
Yeah.
This is there, but it's not valid anymore because it's abrogated. But the ayah is still there to show us that when you do something, you should do it gradually, especially things that are rooted in the society and stuff like that. But there's another way, another thing, which is called verbal abrogation. That an ayah could be there and then it is abrogated verbally, which means the words itself vanish. Even though this is called insa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, سَنُقْرِئُكَ فَلَا تَنْسَى إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ. We will make you recite in a way that you do not forget except what Allah wants you to forget. Which means Allah can make the Prophet forget and everyone forget and the ayah vanishes. So when we say that 6 ahruf vanished, abrogated verbally, it means vanished. So you see, the Sahaba themselves are even trying to remember what exactly was it. It's gone. It's gone. And this is there also in some ayat. Umar said, I am sure definitely that stoning was in the Quran, but he doesn't remember the ayah, and no one remembers the ayah. And they started trying to come up with things that actually sounded funny, like ash-shaykh wa ash-shaykha. That's not Quran. You understand me? So this is the issue. When something is abrogated verbally, it vanishes.
So I'm really intrigued as to whether there is an authentic sunnah that explicitly says there is only the aruf is now to be abrogated. There is only one half. It is the one of the Quraysh, and that is it. I'll be really interested if you could show me that, because as far as I'm aware, I haven't seen this.
I can check that.
If you could show me or give me a reference, that would be amazing. And the other point is even if this is the case, I would still argue that from merely a scholarly perspective, perfect preservation cannot be true. Because if you've got 6 out of 7, and these are all Quran, this is all authentic Quran, there is no distinguishing between any of them, although maybe you'd say the Hafs of the Quraysh is better or something, but they're all Quran. And if they're all now gone, when they were actually in use, they had been recited from the Prophet, then effectively you have 6 out of 7 different modes of the Quran lost. Because we don't know where they are today.
No, not lost. Well, they were not. No. Only one of them is enough, because that's what the hadith says. كل منها شاف كاف. Any one of them is sufficient. But the Qira'at, not one is sufficient. You have to add to collect all the Qira'at in order to understand the whole meaning of the ayah, if the ayah has different Qira'at. This is That's why I'm telling you, the Qira'at has nothing, is that completely different topic from the ahruf. And the main misconception happens when people mix them together.
Okay, so how I would see that is, I think the majority position, as far as I've been told, maybe you can correct me, is that scholars tend to make some relation between the aruf, the 7 different modes of recitation, and the Qira'at, because otherwise it's very difficult to understand why there is Qira'at, why there is these different modes of reading, why there is 10 of them, for example. Because as far as I'm aware, there is no sunnah where Muhammad says there is such a thing as Qira'at, you are to read it in this many of them. My understanding is when he talks about the recitation and how he gives it, he talks about aruf and he says there's 7 of them and they are all Quran. But there's nothing like that for the Qira'at. So by making them related, you can have an argument that is, okay, well, because the Qira'at comes from the aruf, there is some relation there. We can say that Muhammad told us that this would be the case, and therefore we can say, so we know it is sunnah, it comes from Muhammad. But because isn't there, then you can't argue it's sunnah.
I'm trying to understand.
All the oral tradition has lost it.
I'm trying to understand what you're saying. So are you saying that there is no evidence that the Prophet read with Qira'at?
There's nothing in the sunnah that talks about 10 Qira'at. Is that correct?
No, of course, there's a lot in the Sunnah. How did the Qira'at reach us, actually? It's through narration. And there's a lot of hadith. One of them is a hadith narrated by Lady Aisha in Jami' al-Tirmidhi. She said, سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقرأها فروح وريحان. I heard the Prophet, peace be upon him, reciting it فروح instead of فروح وريحان. And that's a completely different meaning, because the first one is فروح وريحان means serenity and fragrant plants. The second one is a soul with fragrant plants. So and there's a lot of ahadith. Actually, if you open the books of Sunnah, you will find chapters called Qira'at, which is like giving us the dalil, the evidence on these Qira'at. How come you say so? No, of course not. Of course not.
But just to say, you gave evidences of different readings and different parts. Absolutely. I'm aware that it mentions these things. But there isn't anything where Muhammad says explicitly, like he does with the Aruf, the Quran is revealed in 10 different Qira'at, and this is how you are to take the Quran from me.
He was teaching the
Anything
Qira'at
like that?
and people were reading it. Why does he need to say that? He is already, this is well known and people are reading it.
But, well, first of all, 10 doesn't come until much later, right? So there seems to have been, at least in the early Ummah, the early period, Tabi'un, Tabi'in, they seem to have this understanding that there's actually more Qira'at. There is more readings. So, for example,
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the problem now. The problem is there is a variation in the way we read a certain ayah. Okay? This is a variation that was there and people were reading it and were knowing well about it. But later on, people started to make this a science and to categorize it and give every qira'ah a name and the name of the best reciter who recites it. So it was known later on like that. Like, for example, saying King James Bible. Does it mean that it is the Bible that was sent by King James? Of course not. You understand me? So that's the issue. But the Prophet didn't say, and I'm telling you, it's like thousands of variations. Variations are a lot, about 4,500 or something like that, or variations. But to categorize them in 10 that this came later. But before, the variations were there, people were reciting them and were very well aware about them. Definitely.
So, I mean, I guess this makes it difficult for me, because if I wanted to say the Qira'at come from Muhammad and Muhammad made it clear that there is these different readings, I would go to the Aruf to explain that, because that's clear. It gives an example. You have Umar bin al-Khattab and Hisham bin Hakim, I think his name is. You have them in just about Al-Furqan, Surah 25, and they brings him to the Prophet and he says, recite your way and I'll recite my way. And Muhammad says, this is correct and this is correct. The Quran is revealed in 7 out of 7 ways, and they're all Quran.
Yeah.
But there is nothing like that gives you that kind of confirmation from the point of view of the Sunnah about the established 10 Qira'at. And if you don't make the relation between the Arabs and the Qira'at,
No, wait.
If you can bring
even this hadith that you mentioned doesn't say seven ahruf. It says it was revealed like that and it was revealed like that. Okay, even this one about Umar ibn Khattab and Hisham ibn Hakim, it says it was revealed like that and it was revealed like that. It doesn't say what exactly. Okay,
it does say 7 actually. I'm looking at it now. I can bring it up on the screen if you want.
The Prophet, it's not by the Prophet. Not by the Prophet.
Well, it was narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab. This is in, let me tell you, Sahih Bukhari 4992. Do you want me to bring it up? At the bottom it says, this Quran has been revealed to be recited in 7 different ways. Actually, you know what? Maybe it's not in Arabic. We can bring this up.
That's him saying so. That's Omar saying so. But the Prophet did not say in 7.
At the bottom of your screen, do you see like a new thing that looks like sunnah.com? If you could bring that up, then I could look at There you go. Wow. Hey, there we go. Good. I don't know why this doesn't work for you though. That's a shame.
Okay, good. So
this is what I'm referring to here. And if
read it then. Read it first.
Okay, so narrated Umar bin al-Khattab. I heard Hisham bin Hakim reciting Surah Al-Furqan during the lifetime of Allah's Messenger. And I listened to his recitation and noticed that he recited in 7 different ways, which Allah's Messenger had not taught me. I mean, we can go on. He also says 7 at the bottom as well. But do you understand my point?
The Prophet himself
in a different hadith, but it means 7.
The Prophet himself said 7 in a different hadith, which I recited. But in this one, the Prophet just told them it was revealed this way and it was revealed that way. That's it.
Okay, you put it from 7 is what
It
I'm
was
saying.
revealed
So,
in this way. The Quran has been revealed to be recited in 7 different ways. Okay, perfect, good. So the Prophet mentioned that there are 7 different ways to recite.
And this is al-ruf, and they are all correct. It's all good for you to do so. And maybe 1/2 is equivalent. You only need 1/2. That absolutely fine with that as well. But they are different, and they are all recitation of the Quran. So to lose them is to lose 6 out of 7, or roughly about 85%.
No, continue the hadith. Continue. He said, read in any one of them, the one that is easy for you. So it is a rukhsa. It is something to make recitation easy. Different from the qira'at. The qira'at are carrying different meanings. This is not carrying different meanings. That's why I'm telling you. That's why I am for I support the opinion that says it was dialects. Okay. Or even it's synonyms, but it's carrying the same meanings.
So are you aware of the hadith where it talks? Actually, no, sorry, it is this hadith. These two people, Umar bin al-Khattab and Hashim bin Hakim, they are from the same tribe of Quraysh. Is that correct?
Yes, of course.
So if they're from the same tribe of Quraysh, how can it be a difference in dialect?
Amazing. Remember that hadith that I told you, the Prophet was worried about who? The old woman, the old man, the little boy, the little girl, and the man who is unlearned and never read a book before. Neither Umar ibn Khattab nor Hisham ibn Hakim fall into these categories. I am now talking to you in English, though I'm not an Englishman. Why? Because I know English and I love to speak in English. Sometimes I speak with my children in English. I love English, but I'm not English. So same thing. If there are Sahaba who are mastering the science of the Quran, and they know the ahruf, why don't they train themselves on it and recite with it in their salah, and because they're going to teach it to the other tribes.
Okay, but they're from the same tribe, right? So I don't think this would be an issue of dialect. So whatever they're arguing about, and remember, he considers this very severe. He drags him by the neck, I think it says. This is very serious. And he even says, what was the surah you were saying? Now, he thinks it's a al-Furqan. He can understand enough of it to know what he's trying to say. But the way he phrases it is, what is the surah you are saying? So he thinks there's a difference here.
Yeah, because Umar was not aware about that yet. But Hisham was a younger man, and he was given this because he's going to teach. So he would like to train himself on the other dialects too. By the way, sometimes I speak in a Lebanese dialect. I like that. Just because I visited Lebanon several times. That's it. But I love it.
So
doesn't mean that.
I think this is.
Yeah.
I was just saying, I think this is good reason to think this isn't just dialects. If this was dialects, I don't think this would be the response they would have. Again, they're from the same tribe.
Whatever it was.
It's a bit.
Whatever it was.
Like if I was from Liverpool and you were from Liverpool, we were both speaking a Scouse accent, right? So dialects wouldn't be the issue. We would both have the same terms for the same things, speaking, even the accents down to the way we speak would be the same. So whatever this issue they have, it must be more substantial than just dialects. And that for me is sufficient enough to say that Aruf is not just dialects, it's something more than dialects.
No, it's anyway, it's dialects or synonyms or whatever. If I know a different way to recite, why don't I recite it and get trained on it? That's it, whatever it was. So the Prophet was worried about categories of people, that he will only teach them this so that they don't get confused. But this doesn't Hisham ibn Hakim does not fall into these categories. Anyway, I don't want also the listeners to think that we're only like discussing controversial things. There are also things that I think you loved in the Quran. Did you read anything that you like in the Quran?
Did I read anything that I liked in the Quran? There were parts that I thought were good. There were parts. I have read the Quran from Surah Fatiha to Surah Nas.
Really? That's amazing. Good.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, the same with the Bible. It took me about 3 to 4 months, I think, to read the Quran. I was reading it on a train. But yeah.
Let me ask you something. Let me ask you. I have some, because I want to show people that we can also have commonalities, and there are things that are inspiring about God. For example, God is described in Surah Al-Buruj, وَهُوَ الْغَفُورُ الْوَدُودُ, and he is the oft forgiving, most loving. Do you agree with that?
So I've got to be honest with you. I would say no, because in other places, I believe in Surah 33, it talks about how Allah does not love the disbelievers. So if he
No,
was all loving, from a Christian perspective,
yeah,
this is just what
yeah.
Christians would say. We would say that God loves even the sinners. He hates the sin, but he loves the sinners. So there's someone who does not subject themselves to the law of Christ, does not follow the Messiah, which is what we Christians do. We would say that God does not like that, but he still loves you. And he
Yeah,
still
no, I'm
calls
asking you
to
about,
repentance.
do you agree with the concept that God is forgiving? And like, okay, let's move to
Oh,
another
just
one. For
generally.
example, indeed,
Yeah.
God is all powerful over everything. Do you believe that God
Yeah.
is all powerful and he can do everything?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, well, let's actually clarify
that's what I
this,
want to show people, that
because
we can agree on things that are also matters of aqidah. For example, إن الله
Sure.
عالم غيب السماوات والأرض إنه عليم بذات الصدور. Indeed, Allah, or God, of course, the word Allah means God. I just want the audience to know that. Let me show something. I have a nice picture here, and I want to show it to them. About the Arabic Christian Bible here. Guys, this is the first page of the Arabic Christian Bible. This word at-takwin means Genesis, and the word Allah is the one highlighted. So in the Arabic Christian Bible, in the first paragraph of Genesis, the word Allah exists 5 times. In the same page, in the first page, 17 times. All through the Bible, it exists thousands of times. I have a friend, a Christian Egyptian friend called Majdi Abdullah, the servant of Allah. So when I say Allah, please, if you're not a Muslim, don't you ever think that I mean anyone else. I mean God, the same God, the God of Abraham, the God of Moses, the God of Jesus. Anyway, so there is also this ayah that also I want to. Oh, it worked now. Good.
Yeah. Nice one.
Yeah, here. Indeed, Allah is the knower of the hidden realm of the heavens and the earth. Indeed, he is all knowing of what lies within the chests. Do you, as a Christian, or as Chris of Speaker's Corner, agree that Allah is all knowing, that he knows everything?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Perfect. But also this one, to him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth, and he is all high, the great. People can be great, but not the great. When we say the something, that's only God. So he is the greatest. No one can be greater than him. Do you agree with that on that?
Yep, we agree on that. Yeah.
Perfect.
There's a lot of commonality.
Yeah.
Yeah, by all means, there is a lot of commonality between our religions. I would say that fundamentally there are differences, and it's these things, of course.
Of course there is. Of course there is.
We always have things that we like to discuss.
Of course.
But we do so respectfully, and we make sure that we don't raise our voices. As we're both being really.
I would never do that. Actually, I never do that, and I think your personality is not that. That's why actually I invited you to speak with me. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you. So, I appreciate that.
Okay. Go ahead. Continue. If you have more examples.
If you examples, you mean related to the Qira'at and things like this, or do you?
Yeah. Well, I said that there is no contradictions. For example, do you think there are contradictions? Because you read the Quran.
Okay. Well,
you read my book.
Well, this is interesting because in Surah An-Nisa, ayah 82. I believe the Arabic says that if this was not from Allah, there would surely be many contradictions.
Yeah.
So the Quran seemingly doesn't have a problem with the singular. It doesn't have an issue with a contradiction. It has an issue with many contradictions. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. No. Had this been,
the Arabic says plural.
Yeah. Had this been not from Allah, there would have been many contradictions, because no one can write a book like that and not have many contradictions. But in this one, there is not one contradiction. Show me contradictions.
So, well, we could get into this. I'm not a fan of contradictions because I don't think people can give theological context and explanations to solve these things. And again, if the Quran seemingly doesn't have an issue with like 1 or 2 contradictions, I don't see why that wouldn't also be applied to the Bible, the Injil or the Torah or the Zabur. If that's the ruling for the Quran, it seems like that should also be ruling for the previous scriptures. So the issue I have is false things. That would be my main issue with the Quran. I think there are things in it that are patently false, and that would be my problem. We could go into big topics here, and I kind of want to avoid it because if we start going down this,
Please.
we're going to go into very big things.
Go ahead.
One would be, so for example, I think that the Quran makes it very clear that it affirms the teachings of the Injil and the Torah. And I think it's quite clear that if you think that it does, then that must be an error because the Injil and the Torah teach things that, well, they go against what the Quran says. So the Quran is making a falsehood here. It is affirming something that it doesn't quite know. So it's saying we affirm the Injil, we affirm the Torah, but then it also says in Surah An-Nisa, ayah 157, that Christ was not crucified. It only appeared to them as if he had been crucified. But again, the Injil says he was crucified. So that to me is wrong. That's a classic example, I think, from the Christian perspective.
Yeah.
We wouldn't know how to reconcile that, for example. Do you have any point to that? Or
Yeah, of course I have. I have a lot actually to say about that.
Just sure. I imagine you did, yeah.
Yeah, we as Muslims believe that there is only one God and there is only one humankind. So there's only one sender and only one recipient receiving. And this means that definitely he's not going to send different messages to confuse people. He's going to send the same message, which is worship God alone and do not associate any partners with him. But he sent it through ages with different messengers. And in many books, all of them are the books of Islam and all of them are the messengers of Islam. So the founder of Islam is not Prophet Muhammad. The founder of Islam is Allah. Muhammad is merely the final messenger of Islam, and the one before him was called Jesus, son of Mary, which is very accurate, son of Mary. And the one before him was Moses, and the one before him was Abraham, and the one before him was Noah, and so on. So one God, one humankind, one religion, not religions with an S, one religion. And this religion has to be suitable for all people in all times. It has to be suitable for the Arab and the non-Arab, the white and the black, the man and the woman, the tall and the short and the fat and the thin. So only one thing is suitable for all those. And it's this: water, not tea and not coffee. Why? Because some people don't drink tea, but everyone drinks water because water is pure. It doesn't have a color, it doesn't taste sweet or sour, and it doesn't smell anything, even a good smell, even a good scent. So Islam is not called after someone, Christianity after Christ, Buddhism after Buddha, Judaism after Judas, and Hinduism after India. Islam just means to submit to God, to obey God. That's it. We are not called Mohammedans, and it offends Muslims when they are called Mohammedans, though they love him so much, because they are not Mohammedans. They are Muslims like him, and like Jesus, and like Moses, and like Abraham, and like all of those. So that's the issue. We believe in the Torah and in the gospel given to Moses and given to Jesus, but not the one written by Mark. Not the one, Mark who? People at that time were called Mark, son of so, John, son of so. But Mark, John, Matthew who? You have to listen to Bart Ehrman. Not only Bart Ehrman, because he left Christianity. So here there will be maybe a bit of a conflict of interest. But even Bible scholars themselves disputed about the authors of the Bible, of the Gospels. And there are things that were very confusing. And by the way, there are things, the Quran says that it is the reference. Whatever the Quran will agree with in the Bible, then it's perfect. It's good. For example, Adonai Elohimu Adonai Achad. Your Lord is your God. Your Lord is one. Qul huwa Allahu Ahad. Perfect. That's perfect, and this is definitely genuine. But there are other things that we definitely believe they were added, and it's not necessarily bad things, not necessarily embarrassing things. But when someone writes, "Bring me my coat which I forgot in Carpus's house," in a book called The Letter of Paul to Someone, this is just a friendly message reminding him to bring him something. Why are Bible scholars insisting that every single letter is the word of the Holy Ghost? Come on. This is really too much. And I'm not talking about other things that you know that I can talk about. There are things that are, you understand, rated R. And I don't want to go through this because you will have your own interpretation. And I don't want to go through this. But the issue is, no, we agree that, and we believe in the books that were given to the prophets, but let me tell you this, in its original language. This is not the Quran. This is Fadel Soliman's translation, Bridges' translation, Fadel and Hala's translation, but not the Quran. The Quran is only the one in Arabic. Bring me the one in Aramaic. That is not a translation, because we know that whenever we translate, there is something lost in translation. What is the original? That's the issue. Well, people, when they talk about the preservation of the Quran, they criticize Uthman ibn Affan for burning the Masahif. You did not bring that. I'm bringing it.
That's
Yeah.
a good point.
No.
So just to go through some things, because you mentioned quite a lot here. So
yeah,
we do know about the evangelists. We know their names. We know who their fathers were. Matthew, for example, is Levi ben Alphaeus, for example. We have Cephas, which would be Mark's name. We know when they were born, when they likely where they died. We know what they did. We know Matthew was a publican. We know these things about them. The idea that we don't know anything about them is just because a lot of people don't bother to look into it. But our traditions in the church tell us quite clearly who they were and what they did. So that is kind of a bit not really applicable here. The scholars, the Bar Ehrman thing, like you don't know who these were. Well, this is based on something like formal anonymity. This is a concept where you have, in the Gospels, they don't ever technically say who is writing them. So, for example, if you look at the Gospel of Mark, there isn't something that says, "Hi, my name is Mark, I am writing this." You won't find that. In the same way that you won't find that in any of the surahs of the Quran, there is never a bit where it says, "I am Muhammad and I am telling you this. I am writing this." You won't find that in the Quran.
Never.
Now,
you
that's
will find even. Can I cut you here? He actually said, "Qul," say, "He is Allah the One." Qul huwa Allahu ahad. He didn't say He is Allah the One. He said, "Say." So even the command "say," he mentioned it to this level of accuracy.
Yeah, but you understand my point, right? That Muhammad is never explicitly introducing himself saying, "I am the one who is like telling you this, that I got this from Jibril from Allah." You won't find that in the surahs. In fact, Muhammad is mentioned somewhere between 4 or 5 times explicitly by name, depending on whether or not you accept Ahmed as a variant name for Muhammad. Jesus is mentioned more, as in Isa is mentioned more. Moses is, Musa is, so on. So from that point of view, anonymity isn't really a thing. The church knew exactly who was writing these because there's never been any issues within the church giving particular authorship to these books. It's always been the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There's never been any contention. No one ever argued about it.
There's a lot of argument. There is a lot of argument within the Bible scholars about the personalities that wrote this. Okay, I'll ask you something. Who wrote the books of Moses?
Sure. Who wrote the book? You mean the Torah?
Yes.
So who wrote the Torah? Well, you could say the classical. So there is a critical scholarly opinion which may say, well, actually, maybe it wasn't all done by Moses. Maybe it was done by later authors. There is that perspective. You could say, well, actually, it was revealed by and written by Moses, who potentially didn't do the last parts of Deuteronomy because that includes his death. And it seems to make more sense that he wouldn't write about his own death. Yeah. And so perhaps it was Joshua that added that part. Or you could say it was...
So it's not the word of God. Joshua was not receiving revelation from God. So this means that the parts of the Bible are not God's revelation. By the way, if you want Mark, the last 12 verses in Mark are, we have a very famous monk, a beautiful one, who died lately in Egypt. His name is Father Matta al-Miskin. Here, this beautiful man, he has a whole exegesis of the Bible. When he came to the last 12 verses in Mark, he said, "I'm not gonna waste my ink or the time of the reader in explaining them because they have nothing to do with revelation." Why is that?
Sure.
Because when it was collected, the Masahif were not burned. Uthman burned them after collecting, after distributing. He collected everything that was written in the presence of the Prophet, because some of them were adding their own understanding, adding some explanation said by the Prophet, adding things, and there were no markers, there were no red pens and blue pens and stuff like that. So by time things got mixed up, and Bart Ehrman also said the same thing. Probably it was something that was written by the students of the author, so it was added. That's the problem. When you are collecting something and you collected it and you are sure of it, tell people anything that you have, bring it, and this is not, it's going to be confiscated, because we are afraid that this can get mixed up by time. That's the issue.
Right. Well, I think it's problematic when we talk about the tradition, as you rightly point out in Sahih al-Bukhari 4986 and 4987, where Uthman is said to burn Quranic materials. Now, scholarly speaking, we don't know what those materials are. We have no way of going back in time and seeing exactly what it is that he burned. I think that's difficult if you hold.
No, we know. We know what he burned. No, I'm sorry. We know what he burned, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud was so sad for burning his notes. These are called masahif. Masahif means, the word mushaf means notes. Every one of them had his own notes that he wrote in it. Quran, wrote many things in it. So if it's only Quran, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud wouldn't worry, because khalas, the Quran is collected and it's being distributed. But he was sad because there's a lot of knowledge that he wrote in it.
You're right, but Ibn Mas'ud,
this knowledge does not get mixed up with the word of God later on.
Ibn Mas'ud disagreed with the Uthmanic Codex initially.
Yeah.
I mean, there is even narrations where Ibn Mas'ud tells his students, there is an ayah in the Quran that talks about how you should bury things, because what you bury with you will be revealed with you on the day of judgment, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. And he actually quotes that when talking about his Musaf. He's saying, we have our codex here in Kufa, and we are saying, he's telling his disciples, his students, to bury them, because Uthman is saying, we need these materials to destroy them. And I mean, there's Shia narrations that talk about pretty horrible things happening to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud by Uthman. There's a narration of Ibn Mas'ud. I know you probably want to accept this, but it is there in history as a report, where Abdullah ibn Mas'ud goes down to Uthman, I think in Medina, I believe, and he enters into his madrasa or masjid, and Uthman sees him and he says something like, something really bad has just entered. And they get people to beat him, according to the story, simply because Ibn Mas'ud is rejecting the Uthmanic Codex. Now, we know scholarly-wise, the Abdullah ibn Mas'ud Codex survives for many years after 652, 656, when the Uthmanic recension occurred. So there is a large amount of Ummah in Kufa, at least, or in modern-day Iraq, that preserved his reading. And his reading is not Uthmanic. His reading differs on these points. And what's interesting is when you look at fiqh, you look at one of the schools of fiqh, they actually know in Surah Al-Ma'idah, I think it's 86, but I'll find it for you. There's a variant in the Ibn Mas'ud Codex that talks about how when you break an oath, it says that you are to feed, I think it's like 10 hungry people, or you are to clothe them, or you are to free a slave. And if you cannot do this, then you are to fast for 3 days. But in Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's Codex, he has an extra word. He has the word consecutively.
Yeah.
So one of the schools of fiqh, it's not Hanbali, it's not Maliki, it's not Safi, it's the other one. Yes, they actually, and that's why in their school of fiqh, they actually tell people, if you do this and you break your oath and you can't do this and you have to fast for 3 days, do it consecutively.
Excellent. That's excellent.
Because we are aware. And yeah, so this is interesting, because if you hold the idea that the Quran is perfectly preserved in terms of a text, then how on earth in Islam do we have verdicts of Sharia, how you apply the Sharia, that look to non-Uthmanic readings and apply them as authoritative?
These are called Qira'at tafsiriyah. These are called a tafsiri qira'ah, an explanatory qira'ah, where he says 3 days consecutively. Consecutively is a word that he's explaining, but by time people thought that that's a qira'ah of the Quran. That's why it's unaccepted, and because it's not proven, so it is called qira'ah shadha, an awkward qira'ah that can be used in fiqh. So some people can use it in fiqh, which is in verdicts, but not in recitation during salah. If you read it in salah, your salah is invalid. So that's the issue.
Right, but Ibn Masud did consider this as part of his codex.
No, he sticked. Ibn Mas'ud submitted and gave his mushaf to be burned, and it was burned. But his qira'ah is there. People know it. People know it. Qira'ah tafsiriyah.
But we have reports that these things are still being used. There are Islamic historians who are still mentioning that they come across the Codex of Ibn Masud and it's still being used. This is different. I mean, again, this wouldn't surprise us, because remember the 7 Qira'at that was established by Ibn Mujahid in the 10th century. I mean, there was other Qira'at that was in use, right?
Yes.
There was other Qira'at that did not follow the rules
Ibn Mujahid qualified lately by Al-Jazari. 3 others qualified.
Yes.
So there are 10 acceptable Qira'at that are qualified to be the Qira'at, but the others are called Qira'at Shadha, which does not match or does not qualify to be Quran, but still we can consider them like the hadith da'if. We can take them in fiqh. We can use them in because it's actually mainly it's explanatory. It's qira'at tafsiriyah. Anyway.
I find this difficult. I wouldn't think that this meant perfect preservation, right? This seems to me to be a kind of preservation, but it's not perfect preservation. So, for example, how do we know that there wasn't qira'at that was actually valid? The only way we would know this is if Muhammad said an authentic sunnah and told us about it. But because that isn't there, we have to rely on later scholars like Ibn Mujahid to basically tell us. Ibn Mujahid is like, okay, I'm going to standardize it at 7. Here are the 7. And that was very contentious. There were tons of Islamic scholars that are like, whoa, why are you rejecting this? Why are you rejecting this? And even Ibn Mujahid, actually, there's material that says he critiqued the very Qira'at he picked. He said, this Qira'at has this reading, it is wrong. This Qira'at has this reading, it is wrong. And that comes from Ibn Mujahid, who standardized the readings. It looks to me as if what has happened is, over time, the Uthmanic Codex had standardized the reading in Al-Razm that did not have the diacritical marks, that was sent out to the different cities, and they were sent out with 2 imams who were there to explain how this should be read in that particular Musaf. We know that the Uthmanic codices were different when they sent out to these 2 different cities. And when they were at these places and they were reading into it, they were reading from their own native tongue. So in other words, they added their own influence to it. So when they added the diacritical marks, they may have got things slightly different from how other readers would have.
They can do that. They can do that. Just a diacritical mark, a wrong diacritical mark, would change the meaning upside down. You can't imagine. It can turn the subject into the object and the object into the subject. I think you have seen that in my book. So
exactly,
a wrong
right?
diacritical mark would be like a bomb. People will not accept it. People are aware, and people are memorizers of the Quran. No way.
But it's quite easy to do this, right? So if we look at Malakir and Medina, right? What is the difference there when it comes to the Warsh Qira'at? Like in terms of the actual text, I could be wrong about this, but is it not just an alif? Like there are obviously. I mean, that seems pretty simple to make a mistake, and when you're copying it, you add an alif.
The alif is a vowel which was not in the rasm before. The alif was added later to the Arabic language, but it was a vowel that was only a sign before above the meme. But originally it can be written Malik and a small alif above the meme, and it's there until today in some masahif. So you read it Maliki Yawmiddin. This is how it's written, because the alif is a vowel, and the waw and the ya sometimes they are not written. Its vowels are different. Like also in the Hebrew, they have the dagesh and stuff that are added above and under the word. But here the importance is, why is it Malik and Malik Yawmiddin? And which one of them is the Quran? Both of them are the Quran. One of them says that God is the owner, and the other one says that God is the king, because not every king is an owner, and not every owner is a king. That's the issue. So God is the king and the owner. We live in a country where the king doesn't even rule.
I think you can resolve a lot of these by combining the meanings. I do think that is a valid way of looking at this as a way of solving this theologically. I think that is fair. I think there are readings that are contradictory, though.
That isn't.
So, for example, if I gave you one,
please
look at it.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to quote. Can I share my screen if that's all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just because I'm quoting a particular scholar when I
which one? Because I have also some here. Maybe I have it here also. Which one?
So can you see my screen? I think you may have to bring it up actually.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you very much. There we go. So let me take a look. Okay, so this is Maren van Putten. I believe you quoted him.
I know.
On your
I know.
podcast.
Friend, yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'd love to meet him.
I know.
He's obviously a very good scholar. So he basically points out that the story of Lot is repeated in the Quran in many different places, and he gives the different verses.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, okay, so there are parallels in Genesis 19, which is where we have it in our scripture. And he has this thread here, and he says, it's been noted that a pivotal moment in the original story about Lot's wife is told quite differently in the Quran than how it is in Genesis. Fine. In Genesis, as Lot and his family leave Sodom and Gomorrah, his wife looks back and turns into a pillar of salt. That's what we have in the Bible. In the Quran, the pillar of salt is missing entirely. Yeah, that's fine. And generally, it's not the wife looking back that causes her perdition. Instead, she is said to be left behind or even decreed to be left behind. And it gives some verses here. But 1181 forms a confounding factor. And he has some screenshots of the different verses. So we can say, except his wife, we are decreed that she is one of those who remain behind. Okay, so she remains behind. So we saved him and his family, except for his wife. We destined her to be of those who remain behind. So again, Lot's wife is not going with them as they leave. She is staying behind. Except an old woman, i.e. his wife, among those who remained with the evildoers, staying behind. And this one as well, except an old woman among those who remained behind. So the Quran is clear in many places that Lot's wife stayed behind. Now, what he goes on to explain is that there is a particular one, which is Surah 11, Ayah 81. There is a variant here, and you include it in your book, by the way. It's written there as well. Here, two angels come to warn Lot and command him to leave his family and not turn around. After that, a phrase follows, which can be read in two different ways. And he gives it in Arabic. I'm not even going to pretend I can pronounce that well. Both mean, accept your wife, but what is being accepted differs. The section consists of three phrases. So travel with your family during a portion of the night, and let among you not one turn around, except your wife. Illa, except in positive sentences, is followed by the accusative. Again, I'm not going to pronounce that. They prostrated except for Iblis. So he gives an example. But when accepting a negative sentence, it shows up in the normative, as in this, there is no God but Allah. So with this phrase, it accepts the positive phrase, so travel with your family except your wife. This is the majority reading. And then it gives two qira'at, read it, according to the Rawiya, illa, and then it goes on to say it, accepting the negative phrase, and not one of you shall turn around except your wife. And then he says, clearly these two readings are difficult to unify. Either the wife did not travel along and stayed behind, or she went along and looked back.
I have to. You have to tell me which ayah is it, because I have to bring it in Arabic and judge. I'm not going to judge. I cannot judge from translations. Translations at the end are a waste of exegesis. So when I translate, I'm explaining my own understanding. So the most important is, or what distinguishes, is the Arabic. So tell me which surah and which ayah.
So it's Surah 11, ayah 81.
Okay, Surah
Hud
must be Surah Hud. Yeah.
Yep.
Surah 11, ayah 81.
Yep.
Okay.
Let me just double check, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
Okay. Because
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Bismillah, I'm bringing it.
No worries.
This is Yunus.
So if Marin is correct here, we would say that this is a reading that seems to be saying two different things that can't both be the case.
This is not going to happen, never. But let me see.
Okay.
Yeah, 81. Yeah. قالوا يا لوط إن رسل ربك لن يصلوا إليك فأسر بأهلك بقطع من الليل ولا يلتفت منكم أحد إلا امرأتك إنه مصيبها ما أصابهم إن موعدهم الصبح أليس الصبح بقريب. Okay. How did I translate this? Let me check it in my translation. Bismillah. Okay. Surah Hud 81 here. They said, "O Lot, we are the messengers of your Lord. They will not reach you, so take your family on a journey while yet a part of the night remains, and let none of you look back. But not your wife, she will be afflicted by that which afflicts them." It means that take your family, but you don't take your wife. If she wants to remain, let her remain.
Right. So what Marin is saying is that there are two ways you can look at this based on the different these two qira'ats. You can either say except your wife is in the sense. Hang on, let me look at this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I show the same also. I show the same in the footnote that and let none of them look back except for your wife. Here means that if she insists, let her look. Khalas, you can't do anything for her. But this one says if she insists to stay, let her stay. So here it's the angels are commanding Lut on what to do in the future. And they are telling him if she wants to remain, let her remain. And because she is destined to be with them and to be afflicted. And if she if she goes out with you and she insists to look back, let her look back. She is at the end going to be afflicted. Beautiful. I don't see contradictions.
So let's read what Marin says here. So he says, so travel with your family except your wife. This is the majority reading. So the majority reading is that go with your family, Lot, but not your wife. Your wife is going to stay behind. And other Quranic verses, remember, there were quite a few other Quran verses that make it clear. And there is, to my knowledge, no Qira'at on them. It simply says that she stayed, but she also was killed.
No. It means she was with them at the end. She ended up like them, whether she stayed or she was punished, because at the end she did not leave the village. By the time they were about to leave the village, or by the time they just left the village, the punishment happened, which is like it is by the way discovered lately by NASA that it was like a meteor that exploded about 4 kilometers above the earth in that area, and those who looked, probably that's what the scientists say, lost their sight before dying. So that's, subhanallah, this is very accurate from the Quran, that you have to be behind your family to make sure that no one looks. But if the wife looked, she's gone with them. If she stayed, she's gone with them. We don't necessarily know. And by the way, the Quran doesn't always give full details 100%, and he leaves things for the mind to think about. The Quran, by the way, is a book of guidance. It is not a book of history. It is not a registrar that registered history details at all.
I agree, but it does make historical claims, and we would assume that those are true, which I think is fair. We both agree there. So the issue here is that the majority reading says quite clearly that she did not go, and that's backed up by other Quran verses that have no Qira'at variant that also say she did not go. But then there is Qira'at on this verse where it says, and none of you shall turn around except your wife. In other words, the but your wife part, the except your wife part, is being applied to those who turned around, not those who went. So in other words, the minor reading is saying she did go, and then she looked around, and therefore she perished, presumably.
We have to check the tafsirs and see what does it mean fil ghabirin, that she did not really go, by the way. And this is one of the meanings of this ayah, that she did not even go. Okay. Or does it mean that she is considered one of their group? So even if she leaves, she's going to be punished outside the village. I don't see contradiction, by the way. It just doesn't.
The contradiction would be, did she leave or not?
It doesn't tell us exactly what happened. Because here it's the angels are commanding him on what to do in the future. It's not the angels that are reciting something or telling him an event that happened in the past.
I agree. This is talking future tense. It's explaining what will happen.
Yes.
But is it saying that she will go and turn back, or will she stay and turn back? And the reason why I think this is quite powerful and difficult is because there are other verses in the Quran that are clear, much clearer, that say she did not go. So how can there be a Qira'at reading that suggests that she did go?
Not necessarily. That it doesn't necessarily mean that she did not go. It means that she is among this group that stayed. She is among the group that will be afflicted like that, which is the group of the villagers, the rest of the people, but not necessarily that she will leave or not. So the issue is here that this ayah does not even contradict that, because one of the meanings is she may want to stay, let her stay, and she may want to go, and she will want to look back, let her look back. She is in any way going to be punished like them. I don't see a contradiction still. Do you have another example that's clearer than this? Because this is not clear. The contradiction is not clear.
Well, see, these are the Quran verses, right? Except his wife, we decree that she is one of those who remained behind. Okay, so this verse is saying she remained behind quite clearly. So we saved him and his family, except for his wife. We destined her to be of those who remained behind. Again, very clear, she remains behind. Except an old woman, his wife, among those who remained. So she again remained. Except an old woman among those who remained behind.
And she remained.
So
then she remained. Good.
Okay, but there is a Qira'at that says that she did not, because she turned around. She went with them and she turned around.
No. I'm sorry. The one that says that she may go and want to look around, speaking about something in the future. But the others are speaking about things that happened, that she remained, then she remained.
Okay, but I don't think we're going to agree on this one.
We're not going to agree on that, definitely. Give me another example where it's like more clearer than this, that there's a contradiction. There's no contradiction.
Okay, I can do that. So if we go to Surah Yunus, Surah 10, Ayah 16.
Yeah. I think I have it here. What does it say?
Marine Van Putten actually goes on to say that Abdullah ibn Masud didn't even have this as part of his codex, by the way, in regards to the.
What does it say? What does Yunus 16 say? No, not this one. Okay, let's remove this one. Okay, Yunus 16. Yunus 16. No, not this one too. Okay. I don't know how to remove this from this. To remove. Yunus 16. I have it somewhere here. Here. Yunus 16. What does it say? Can you say the ayah?
Let me just bring it up from my stuff, and then I'll quote it to you.
I think I have this here.
So the ayah says,
here.
Had Allah willed, I would not have read it to you, and He would not have informed you about it. And then it goes on. But the variant says, and He would have informed you about it. So it's a literal negation. It's one saying something will and one saying something isn't.
No, it doesn't say that. Listen to me. And I have it on the screen now, by the way.
Yep.
قل لو شاء الله ما تلوته عليكم ولا أدراكم به. Say, had Allah willed, which means that it's going to speak about something that did not happen, I would not have read it to you, which is the Quran, and He would not have informed you about it. That's one.
Yep.
The second one is, had Allah willed, which is something also that did not happen, I would not have read it to you, and He would have informed you about it, which means through someone else, somehow else, somehow. Like, for example, here the Prophet is saying, had Allah willed, neither He could have sent me as a prophet, nor even you were made aware of the Quran at all. Or he neither sends me as a prophet, and He can make you aware of it. By the way, Allah could have sent the Quran to each one of us by revelation. Couldn't every one of us have got in touch with Jibril and receive it like the Prophet ﷺ? But it would be too hard for us to do that. The Prophet was suffering when he was receiving the Quran, and then he calls for the scribes, and then he recites what he received. So here it is talking about two things. And you know what? I didn't like that when you read the second variation, you did not continue what I wrote, which is through someone else. Because like
is
that,
that in the Arabic though?
No. You are reading it. No. But this is explanatory. It explains and says that Allah either could have not sent me as a prophet, nor made you aware of the Quran at all, or Allah could have not sent me as a prophet and still made you aware of the Quran, because he is indeed all powerful and he can do everything. But it's a blessing that he chose me and made me suffer in receiving it, because it was downloaded on the Prophet's heart. And then the Prophet propagated it to us. So that's the blessing here. I don't see any contradiction between them.
I guess this has a historical context, right? This is referring to a conversation that happened. So either Muhammad was told to say, well, I guess I have an issue with Muhammad saying two contradictory things. If he meant to say that these are both true in a sense, it would make more sense that he would just say that. Here he's basically saying, I'm revealing this ayah in one way. I'm going to reveal it in another way that technically says the opposite.
Not the opposite. Not the opposite. Another option.
Well, okay, it might be another option, but the option is the opposite.
It's not the opposite.
So if I were to ask Muhammad, had Allah willed, you would not have Muhammad would not have read it to you, but would Allah have informed them about it? He would have had to tell me both yes and no.
If I'm talking about a past event, then this would be a contradiction. But if I'm talking about a hypothetical event, and I tell you, if I'm taking you somewhere to for example, if I'm taking my son to school, and I tell him, by the way, I could have been taking you now to somewhere else like a nightclub, or I could have been taking you somewhere else like an archery club. There is no contradiction. I'm telling him about two things that did not happen.
But the example here, it would be, you could say that to your son, but you could have also apparently said, did you know I could not be taking you to the archery club?
Yeah.
Which is just like, what? It's the opposite in meaning. So could he have taken him to the archery club, or could he not have taken him to the archery club?
No. Here he is saying, the case is, Allah chose a person, a good man, and sent him the revelation, and told him to propagate it. Okay, like he did always in every era. Jesus was given the gospel, told him to propagate it, and Jesus himself said that in the Bible that exists in the hands of the Christians today. Says, I don't make up things. Whatever I hear, I say. That's exactly what the Prophet Muhammad did, what Moses did on everything. But here the Prophet is telling them, and Allah is commanding him to tell them, there could have been two other scenarios. Allah could have not sent me and still made you aware of it somehow else, because he can do everything. Or Allah could have not sent me and even left you ignorant of it and not know anything. But thank God he didn't do any of those two scenarios, because both of them are not good. There is no contradiction. It's speaking about hypothetical things that did not happen. How can they contradict? They did not even happen at all.
I think this is difficult.
You will never find any contradiction in the Quran.
Well, I think these are contradictions. I mean,
no.
If you think of it in the literal sense of, you're saying one thing and then you negate it in the same verse, I think that's difficult.
Come on.
And again, I don't think you can't say that the Quran is preserved. I think you still can. I think you just can't say the Quran has been perfectly preserved.
It's God who preserved it. Thank God that he did not let us preserve it.
But you see, that's difficult. If Allah is the one who preserves his book, which there's ayah that says this, Then why is Ibn Mujahid the one who standardizes what's acceptable Qira'at and what is not?
No, but he did not invent them. They were there. But he told
But he
people
chose them.
Yeah, because they needed to be standardized. It's the numbers of Muslims are growing. People are learning from each other, and there are definitely some ignorant people teaching. Until today, there are ignorant people teaching here and there, and we need to stop them by standardizing things, issuing books, telling people not to hear to ignorant people. That's different. That's normal. That's normal. This is scholarship.
Right, but you see, what perfect preservation would mean is that there is one recitation that has been accepted by everyone, and everyone uses that recitation. That's what perfect would mean here. But because that's not what happened historically, and in fact there was at least 25 different qira'at that was in use, so you would have had imams leading salah, giving this their understanding of the qira'at, which would have been incorrect according to the scholars later on. Ibn Mujahid came and he said, no, this isn't correct, these are the ones that are correct. And then there were scholars that disagreed with him. And even he said there are issues with these recitations. And I can show you Marin van Putten quoting that as well. It becomes difficult to see how this isn't just later scholars picking which recitations of the Quran they want and which ones they don't want. And this is why I said it's very important to me that in the Sunnah, if you can find something that says, I am reciting to you the Quran that I got from Jibril, who got from Allah. There are 10 recitations, take them from me and say them. But anything else, no. If you could show me that, I'll concede and I'll say, Muhammad
the Prophet never said 10 recitations. It's we canonize them in 10 recitations, but there are many, there's 4,000 variations, okay? Some imams chose to read these with these, okay? But some others chose other choices. But the variations are there, and it is known that even in the salah, if you read every ayah in a different qira'ah, that's still acceptable because you did not make a mistake. You did not make a mistake. As long as you're reading according to a qira'ah that descended from seven heavens, from above seven heavens. Because at the end, the ayah as a whole has to be read in the same qira'ah. Because as I told you, I gave you examples that the whole meaning will be both together. I have actually, for example, here this one, okay.
This is another one I
this is because I heard you in one of your. Today I watched a video for you in which you criticized this one. This is an amazing one.
Yes,
this is an amazing. It's a mind blowing. This one says in Surah As-Saffat. Okay, you want to comment on it? Go ahead and say what you have.
Okay, so these verses are not the same. They talk about different subjects, and they also talk about different actions. So my point is that you can reconcile this and say they're doing both. I think that is a theological way you can do that. But I think that there is differences in the verses, and these are different meanings.
Of course. That's what I love about the Qira'at is the different meanings in the same word. Let me explain this to you, Chris. Believe me, I love you so much, and I really, really wish that one day I'll be giving you shahada, if not at the end of this presentation, inshallah. Anyway, listen. بل عجبت ويسخرون. The other قراءة بل عجبت ويسخرون. Completely different. بل عجبت أنت. بل عجبت means you were amazed. بل عجبت means أنا. I am amazed. But why didn't I translate it as I am amazed? Because that's God speaking. And amazement entails ignorance of something that happened. So what is amazement? That there is something that you didn't know about, and then when you knew about it and you found it big, that's amazement. God, there is nothing that God doesn't know, but he can find something big, but it's something that he knows. So here is, they are ridiculing the Quran. And this amazed Prophet Muhammad, because he didn't know that they are going to be that bold to do something that bad and big. So he was amazed. But for Allah, ajibtu means that this is not gonna pass without a punishment. This, I took a note of it. I strongly took a note of it. So that's why we changed this in the translation. But in Arabic, it's just one diacritic mark. Fatha became Dhamma, but it changed the subject. Yeah, it changed. And the meaning of this ayah, let me just finish this. The meaning of this ayah is neither one, it's both together combined. They ridiculed.
I understand.
And you were, they ridiculed. And you were amazed. And I strongly took note of it, or I gravely noted this ridicule, which means I'm going to punish them. And there is no way that they can be forgiven. That's it. Because the one who ridiculed the word of God is really doing a grave sin.
So, given that the content of these is so radically different, given quite a small change to diacritical marks, to me this looks like someone has made a small error, produced something.
No.
Here, and even if I were to accept that this is just complementary, you can combine these.
That's why there is a chain of narration. I have a chain of narration in my recitation. So everyone in my recitation is a man that is known for being a scholar of Quran, whom his student recited the whole Quran for him. I stayed for more than 2 years waiting for my turn every day for about 2 hours to recite my portion to my sheikh, and he corrects me. And any mistake I do, next day I have to come and recite it properly, and then I start again. So there is a chain of narration for every one of these.
Oh yeah, I'm aware that they say that mutorata, and they usually say there has to be at least 2 for each qira'at. But when it comes to this here, this to me it's perfectly sensible to say there is two recitations. And I would say therefore there is variance. These are variants, and there is therefore 2 Qurans being shown here. One Quran that has the same ayah in the same surah saying one thing, and one Quran saying in the same surah in the same ayah saying a different thing. That talks about a different person doing a different action.
No. I give my explanation, and it's clear that the Quran is a third style of language, which is the same wording can have layers of the meaning. So the whole meaning of this ayah is both meanings combined. Okay.
I think that's a good theological explanation. I don't think it works for everything. And I think mine is perhaps the one that
look at this.
Might be more scholarly at this point.
Look at this. This is another example also, which is I think in Surah Al-Shu'ara. Yes, Surah Al-Shu'ara. It says, وَإِنَّهُ لَتَنزِيلُ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ نَزَلَ بِهِ الرُّوحُ الْأَمِينُ عَلَى قَلْبِكَ لِتَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُنذِرِينَ. And most surely it is a bestowal from on high, from the Lord of all realms. So because this Quran is not like any book. It's not written in this world for the world to read it. This Quran descended above the world from outside the world for the world to read it. That's big. And it says, the trustworthy spirit, it means Jibreel, came down with it. There is another qira'ah. Instead of نزل به الروح الأمين, it is نزل. You see the difference here in the second letter of the first verb, and الروح, the diacritic mark of the last word, instead of الروح, which means that Jibreel now became the object. And Allah is now in the ayah, and He is the subject that descended Jibreel with the Quran. So the first one says, Jibreel is the subject who took the Quran and came down with it. The second one says, Allah sent Jibreel with the Quran. Why did Allah say so? Here, let us show people what this ayah means. The trustworthy spirit came down with it. The second qira'ah says, He, with a capital H, Allah, bestowed the trustworthy spirit with it from on high. Why? It's because that one of the alternatives of the Quran, there are only 4 alternatives from the Quran. Either the Quran is a revelation from God, or the Quran is authored by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, or the Quran is authored by someone and the Prophet took it from him and said that it's from God, or the Quran is a revelation, but not from God, from Satan. And that's what the same surah is saying. وَمَا تَنَزَّلَتْ بِهِ الشَّيَاطِينَ. And in no way have the devils been descending with it. So what happened then? What happened is Allah bestowed the angel Jibreel who is trustworthy with the Quran from on high. And this is mentioned beautifully by only changing the diacritic marks in this in these two words. That's what I'm telling you. It's mind-blowing. But it's hard to explain it to a non-Arab speaking person. But it's
I guess as well, for us, we would just say this is a variant. That's how we would approach this in biblical scholarship. If we had two manuscripts, I agree. It is a variant, definitely. I don't think there is a basis in Sunnah that this goes back to Muhammad.
No,
and the isnads, if you can show me, again, you show me Sahih, at least by one scholar of good reputation, who says that there is a narration that says that Muhammad revealed the Quran in 10 Qira'at, 10 different readings, then I will accept it.
It's not 10. There are several ways, several readings, and then it was canonized in 10 main readings. Canonized.
But then it's man canonizing it. That's
of course. Men canonized it. Men canonized it. By the way, I want to tell you more than this. Well, the order of the surahs, there is a dispute among the scholars. Is it the Sahaba who took the decision to order the surahs like that, or is it from Allah? The stronger decision that is from Allah. That's why when Zayd at the time of Uthman did to the copy of Abu Bakr, is that he reordered the surahs according to the last presentation, because Abu Bakr was focused on collecting everything and not missing anything, but he was not focusing on their order. The order was made at the time of Uthman according to the last presentation. But I'm not shy of telling you. I'm not shy of telling you that some scholars say no, it's a decision of the companions. Fine.
Yeah, well, I heard it was the majority opinion that it was ijma, that it was a mix. It was partly the Prophet and it was partly the companions that came up with this order, because the Prophet says in Sahih narration that Surah Tawbah, and I think it's the surah before it, Surah 8. The Tawbah precedes Surah 8.
Tawbah is number 9,
it's mentioned explicitly. Yeah, so it's because it's mentioned explicitly, they go, this one comes after this one. So there are narrations you can take where Muhammad does order things, right? But he doesn't order all things in narrations. And so what I thought was the majority opinion, at least Dr. Yasser Qali seems to be of the opinion that it is that there was an ijma. There was an ijma that gave that consensus a little later on, which is interesting. There is a point you did make, perhaps it was in the video, that I do take a disagreement with. You said that everything was written down at the time when Muhammad died. I don't think that's true. I would, if you can show me again an authentic narration where that is said, everything is written down, then I'll take that. But it seems to me, based on certain hadith, that there was partial writings and there was also partial memorizers. Because the way that Abu Bakr with Zayd bin Thabit, when they were collecting the Quran 2 years after Muhammad died, it says that they took those who had memorized parts of the Quran, or memorized some of it, or maybe even whole, supposedly, but they also took the written materials. So they used both. And the fact that they used both tells me that they could not rely on either alone. They could not get, for example, they could not just get some of the Sahaba who are Hafiz, they memorized the Quran, they could get them in a room and they could say, right, recite Surah Fatiha, recite Surah Baqarah, and go through the whole thing. And Zayd bin Thabit and Abu Bakr and his scribes could be there writing it down. That didn't happen according to the narration. Instead, they got some people who had memorized it and some written materials, whether on palm, trees, bones, leaves, all these things. And again, the material type tells us this is more note form. So, and given that these things are being collected and used, it seems to suggest that it was not fully.
I love your questions. Your questions are beautiful and are amazing. Yeah, really. Now we have memorizers who memorize the Quran. And we have parchments. So the parchments, every parchment had to qualify, there must be 2 witnesses who witness that it was written in the presence of the Prophet, except one ayah that had only 1 witness, but that witness was commended by the Prophet for being extremely trustworthy, and he is equal to 2 witnesses. That was amazing.
So it's counted as 2.
Exactly. Yeah. So the written things are a confirmation that that's exactly word for word what was revealed, but it does not confirm that this is the whole Quran. Here comes the memorization role. The memorization says, guys, there must be an ayah missing. Where is this ayah? Does someone has it at home? You understand me? So the memorization of the Quran guards or confirms that everything that was revealed from the first letter in Al-Fatiha to the last letter in Surah An-Nas is there. But the written things confirm that that's exactly what was revealed and written in the presence of Prophet Muhammad. I hope this is clear. Or this is also not convincing.
Yeah. Well, I think you're kind of making my point, which is that you have the memorizers, right? So if the Quran has all these memorizers, you would simply ask them, you put them all in a room, ask them to recite the Quran, and you would have a team of scribes write it down. The fact that they mention written materials, and it sounds like partial written materials, none of these are complete Qurans, they're just little pieces of things that people have found. And remember, there was no diacritical marks here, so they would have just been the consonantal azm. That to me tells me that the Quran had not been written down at this point. Instead, what's happening is they're saying, okay, I mean, this will explain why Zayd bin Thabit, I think it's Zayd bin Thabit, he says, it would be easier, when he's talking to Abu Bakr, it would be easier if you told me to move a mountain than to do some things that Muhammad did not do, which is to collect all of the Quran and to write it down.
He was afraid of doing something new because they were so afraid of doing something that the Prophet didn't do. But it was written in the presence of the Prophet, and it is known that there were 48 scribes of Prophet Muhammad. Whenever he's receiving revelation, he would tell them, call Ali quickly, call Muawiyah, call anyone. Any one of those 48 scribes who are learned. And anyway, I want you to finish your question because actually I have a question for you too. Are you only the one? Sure, yeah.
Well, you said you want me to finish my point.
Finish your point.
My point basically is that I disagreed with you when you said the Quran has been written down by the time of his death. I don't think it had been. I think Abu Bakr led a committee to get the parts that were written down, get those who had memorized either large parts or maybe even the whole of it, and he got them into a room and he combined them. I think that's why you had the first copy, right? The first copy is Abu Bakr's, the first recension, the first writing down of the Quran.
Yeah, a committee did this collection. And did it by the cooperation of all the Sahaba, and everyone who had a parchment in his house brought it, and two witnesses witnessed that was written in the presence of the Prophet. What's strange in this?
I'm just saying that it looks as if they had to rely on oral testimony from the Sahaba that had memorized it. They didn't rely on books. They didn't like have Surah Al-Fatiha was written down somewhere, Surah Al-Baqarah was written down somewhere, and they just went out and they got it and went, okay, now we just put it all together. I don't think that's what happened. The narration seems to be suggesting quite heavily that actually, no, it was both. And that would explain why he said he was looking for the last surah of Surah Tawbah, and he said he only found it with one person, right? So presumably that's his testimony. Unless you think
it's only one ayah, only one sign, one statement.
It's only one ayah, but
everybody knew it. The memorizers knew it, but it was not written except in the presence of one person. That's the issue.
But it never says written.
No, there is.
He was looking for.
No. Everybody knew this ayah, but it didn't. The parchment did not qualify the condition of having two witnesses seeing it written in the presence of the Prophet. Only one saw it, but it was the whole Quran was memorized.
Sure, and I think that's what they relied on. I don't think they relied on written down copies of or just the individual parts of the Quran. I don't think they did that. I don't think they had all of the Quran in that way.
They did both to be very accurate.
You talk about these two witnesses. I fully accept that's a tradition, but does that tradition say that this is to do with written, or is this just validating someone's testimony? As in, we asked someone about it, and then we got two other people to validate what they said. Because I'm pretty sure it's based on what they said, it makes no distinction at all and doesn't say. But I'm pretty sure it doesn't say written. No, if you could show me that, I'll put my hands up and say I'm wrong.
It's like evidence in court. There must be a witness who says, yes, this was confiscated in the place where the crime was committed. There must be a witness to say this was written in the presence, but not confirm what's in it. What's in it is confirmed by the memorizers, and all of them, many of them were memorizers.
But in that same analogy, you can have two people give testimony about someone's witness. So if someone says, I saw John, And two people can be like, yes, John was there, and confirm it. That has nothing to do with written texts. So if you can show me it's about written text, I'll take it back. But as far as I'm aware, it isn't about written text.
Okay.
But anyway, you said you wanted to ask me a question.
Yes. You know, in the beginning, you agreed with me on some attributes of God. Yeah. Like being the all-powerful. You agree that God is all-powerful. He can do everything. God is all-knowing. He knows everything. That God is the great and no one is greater than God. But I really don't know how Christians believe that. And at the same time, they believe in the Holy Trinity, which says that the Son is God. The Son is God, but the Son also said, the Father is greater than I. So the Son cannot be God because God
John
is
14,
greater
verse
and the
28.
Son is not going to lie. The Son also said I'll tell you, I have this because this
John
really
chapter
always,
5, verse 30 is probably what
yes, exactly. I can of myself do nothing. That he said that he cannot do everything except with the help of God. Also here, but of that day and that hour, no one has knowledge, not the angels, and neither the Son, but the Father alone. It's like the Son says or telling us that the Father is God alone. And that's what the Quran says. They have made Allah one out of three. So we believe that that's what happened. The Father is God, but the Son is the messenger, and the Holy Spirit is the angel. And you guys just worship a package. And
okay, but you don't think that the Father is Allah, right?
No, yeah, the Father, yeah.
You don't think that Allah is a father?
No. We don't believe that he is a father in term of,
okay.
No, but you call him a father, okay, then one of them is Allah, but not the other two. That's what I mean. Of course, we are so cautious of calling God a father or sons or stuff. We stay away from this because it confused people through time. But the issue here is, how come you're not the first Christian who agrees with me that God has to be all powerful and there is nothing that he cannot do? But Jesus says that he, out of his own self, he can do nothing, and you still can call him God.
Well, it's quite simple, really. It's the fact that we don't think that Jesus and the Father will ever go against each other because they share one divine will. So it's impossible for Jesus to, in effect, act of his own will and do something completely against what the Father also wills, because they share that same divine will. So that to us makes quite a lot of sense.
Is Jesus God in flesh? Is Jesus God?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is the incarnate Word.
Is Jesus truthful when he said that he does not know everything?
So what's important to understand here is when we talk about the incarnation, we talk about divinity taking on flesh. It enjoins onto itself flesh. So we believe that Jesus was the only person who had two natures, a divine nature and a human nature. Because as Christians, we believe Jesus is fully a man. We believe that everything that you need to be thought of as a human person, a man, Jesus had, he embodied. And we also believe that he fully embodied everything that it means to be God. Namely, he embodied the divine essence. So he has two natures. Now, in the human nature, he does not know all things. And this is quite clear. There's a verse in Luke where it says that Jesus was increasing in wisdom. Obviously, that's not possible if there is a sense in which he didn't know things. So that again affirms that in his humanity, he didn't know certain things. But in his divinity, he did know all things. And this is affirmed by other verses. So for example, in John chapter 16, verse 30, right after saying that he is speaking plainly, he says he knows all things. And we can bring that up if you want. There are other verses as well. John chapter, I think it's 21. Again, he says to the disciples say to him, I think it's Peter, he says, Lord, we know that you know all things. So the Bible is, in the Gospels, is full of verses that say Jesus knew all things. So when you go to Mark 13:32 and the parallel in Matthew 24:36, the question then just for us.
In the Trinity here, this Son who is God is only the divine nature, but not the human one?
So again, sorry, do we think the Son is the divine nature, not the human one?
Only, but not the human.
So for us, in a particular point in time, the incarnation occurred. And this is, I mean, again, you have the story of the virgin birth in your Quran, right? In Surah 19, Surah Al-Milium.
Yeah,
well, we think that through this, the eternal word, the eternal Son of God, which is mentioned in John 1, became incarnate into the flesh. So now Jesus of Nazareth is fully a man, but he also embodies fully the divine essence.
Perfect.
So there was a point before that. Yeah.
After that happened, he said that he cannot do everything. And he said that the Father is greater than him. So he's not the greatest. And he said, so why then are people confused with this Trinity, which is unfathomable?
I would caution you about this, because if you talk about unfathomable things, there are unfathomable things in Islam. Yes,
yeah, of course, no problem. I'm just talking about this,
right?
So don't try to
absolutely fine, but by all means. Now, I could just appeal to mystery and say that actually we affirm it, but we don't say how. Bila Kayf, we don't talk about the how. That would be a very similar Islamic perspective, but I don't think Christians do this, because we have ways that we can rationalize this through scholastic theology. We have logic and reason, and we believe that they aren't separate from theology in certain aspects. So what we would say is that God is one in essence, but he is three in relation, or hypostasis, or person. So we affirm the Shema, Hear, O Israel, Lord your God is one. We affirm this as Deuteronomy 6:4 and repeated elsewhere in the Old Testament and the Torah. Yeah. We affirm this about his essence. There is only one God. If you find it, you will never find a Christian saying there's more than one God. If they say that, they're immediately out of the church. They're not a Christian if they say there is more than one God. But they will affirm that within God, there is three relations. Yeah.
Excellent. But here, the Son is not the Holy Spirit, and the Son is not the Father, but the Son is God. The Father is God, but the Father is not the Son, is not the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, they are distinct relations. Yeah. So in the same, let me put it this way: Allah has a hand. Allah has attributes, but are those attributes Allah, or are they separate from Him?
His own attributes. Allah is not his hand.
Are they Him?
His hand is it's
okay. So Allah is not His hand.
Yeah, of course not. Allah has attributes. His attributes are not separated from Him.
Let me tell you how I would defend this if I was a Muslim, and then you can see the parallels that I'm making towards the Christian belief.
Yeah.
If I was a Muslim, I would say that Allah has these hands, He has these attributes. They are distinct but not separate. And I would say that because that's basically the position that I hold regarding the Trinity. They are distinct, so there is a real Son, there is a real Father, there is a real Holy Spirit, but they are not separate. They are united in will, they are united in essence. They do not go and do their own thing. They all act in unison, which is exactly why John chapter 10, verse 30 says, I and the Father are one, in relation to giving out eternal life. So Jesus gives eternal life according to our Gospels, by the way. So from that point of view, as a Muslim, I would say the same thing about the other attributes. The only difference here between what I'm saying and what you could be saying, if you hold this view, is that I'm talking about relations or persons or hypostasis, as it is in Greek, and you're talking about attributes. That's the only difference. But we're saying the same thing about them. Ultimately, God has things, right? God has power. God has knowledge, and He's all powerful and all knowing. Well, if He has these things, they are called, technically speaking, parts. There is a part of Allah that is all knowing. There is a part of Allah that is all powerful. And the reason you say that it is parts is because it is distinct. You can point it out, right? So, for example, Al-Rahman, Al-Rahim. You use these names to refer to attributes, but that isn't all of Allah, right? Allah is not just mercy. Surely is also justice. Surely is also all-knowing. Surely is the first and the last. Surely is the light. Surely He is so on and so forth. He's all the other attributes. But by doing this, you have to accept that there are parts here.
We call it Sifa Dhatiyya, which means it has to be in Him. He cannot be without it.
Sure. So it's not separate from Him, right?
Good. Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
but the Son is not the Father. That's separation.
The right hand is not His eye. His speech is not His vision. His face is not His...
These are different attributes.
But are they all parts of Allah?
Yes, of course. The issue is, these are attributes of Allah. We don't say part because we don't talk about Allah as a physical being. We don't do that. Well, I'll tell you,
parts can also happen in non-physical things as well.
I'll tell you the truth, because I consider myself a Christian. If I want to be a Muslim, I have to be a Christian in terms of following Jesus, but as he preached. And Jesus preached clearly that he is not God in the Bible. And everything that says that Jesus is God in the Bible is something that needs interpretation. Like the one you mentioned, for example, I and the Father are one. Well, okay, one in what? You understand me? It needs interpretation. It needs interpretation to understand it like that.
I understand. Let me just.
We have a hadith that says, whoever obeys the messenger obeys Allah. Not one Muslim says that the messenger is Allah, though it can be understood like that.
Okay. So when you talk about John 10:30, the verse, the context really starts at 27. In 27, he says eternal life. Jesus is equating the fact that the Father gives eternal life with the fact that he also gives eternal life. And then he ends it with, I and the Father are one. So the context there is giving eternal life. Now, giving eternal life is something that only Allah can do. Is that correct?
Yeah. But I need to see the
Jesus says he's God.
He says
I can bring it up and we can go through it. Yeah. The Gospels are full of these things. Jesus says you can pray to him and he answers your prayers in his name.
Yeah, this is all in John. John actually made Jesus more divine than the other three. And John, John was written over 70 years after Jesus.
Okay, but you see, I can also bring up the same point about the Quran, right? The Qira'at was only really accepted at this point in time.
No, don't say accepted.
How do I know that's the correct
Qira'at? It's not accepted, canonized, but it was always there from day one. And it's in the hadith. And
supposedly it was, right? Like, I have difficulty with that because I don't accept the idea of isnaz, the science of hadith, the chains of narration. I think that they're problematic. Here's an interesting thing. You mentioned before, you said one of the attributes of Allah is he's the first, he is the last, right?
Yeah.
Jesus says he is the first and he is the last. That's in the book of Revelation.
I have to check the verse. And at the end, I told you, well, there's a lot of things in the Bible that we don't accept at the end. So for us, the Bible is not evidence for us.
I understand this.
Let
me tell you where you're going to go, because I go to Speaker's Corner and I debate people all the time on this. So I can tell you how this is going to play out. You're not going to be able to tell me that in the Bible or in the Gospels, Jesus is not God. There are too many things that are going to be very problematic for you. Jesus is even called God directly in John chapter 20, verse 28. So it's out of the question. What you're eventually going to do is you're going to have to say that the Bible has been corrupted. That's ultimately where the Muslim dialogue will go.
It's not because of that. Because we also, by the way, many were called God. You know what? Satan himself was called God in the Bible. You know what? Moses was called God in the Bible. I made you God for Pharaoh. Many were called God.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it's
right, but it's
anyway. Maybe I shouldn't have brought this.
That's all right. I know, because this is a heavy topic and it goes many places.
It's a different topic. We can talk about it. We can have a session for that. Actually, by the way, I would love to know what you think about it, because as much as I'm interested also in studying Islam. By the way, I'm a graduate of a Catholic school. And I studied Christianity like I studied Islam, of course. And I studied Christianity like I studied Islam, by the way. Yeah, but I stopped talking to Christians over 15. You're the first Christian I talked to since maybe for 15 years now. First one. I stopped. Oh, wow. Yeah, I stopped. It's like time consuming and effort. I just focused on the Quran. And my life changed since I did that. Like yours is going to change. If you just approach the Quran in a certain way, it's going to give you a lot. You know what? I want you to ponder upon the sign number 25 or 26. I think 25 of Surah Al-Baqarah, where it says that it's all about the approach of the human being towards the Quran. If you approach the Quran to learn from it, it's going to give you a lot of knowledge. If you approach the Quran to ridicule it, it is going to misguide you and give you a lot of things to go and ridicule. The Quran itself, as much as it can guide, it can misguide also. It all depends on the approach of the person towards the Quran. I advise you, and I advise all our audience to approach the Quran to learn from it, and they will find a lot. Their life will change. And by the way, If anyone enters Islam, he is never going to leave the religion of Jesus. He's going to join Jesus in his religion. How did Jesus pray?
Yeah.
He went a little further and then he fell on his face and prayed. Do you know how the Arabic Bible translates this? The only Bible that translates it like that. And he fell on his knees and prayed. They don't say on his face. Greek, English, French,
I'm not sure what
they all
this
made it on his face.
do.
Why the Arabic
Right.
Bible made it on his knees? Because they don't want Arab Christians to know that Jesus prayed like Muslims.
Okay. The problem is that he didn't. In John 17, it starts off by saying that Jesus prayed standing up, looking upwards. Like,
and why does it say? Why does it say? And he fell on his knees.
I mean, Jesus. Oh, he may have. Yeah. I think you can make a case that he did it. Yeah, but to say that it's just how he prayed. Yeah, Garden of Gethsemane. Right? There is a case to be made that but to say that that's just how he prayed and he prayed like a Muslim is disingenuous, because other parts of these texts say that he prayed like a Jew. Because
Jews pray like Muslims too, by the way. If you look at Orthodox Jews and how they pray, go and check it on YouTube.
Wait, there's Orthodox Christians that properly prostrate. They put the face to the floor.
Yeah, but they put
the Zabiba, maybe.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm telling you, I'm just telling people that, guys, we are not aliens. We are people who follow Jesus and love Jesus and love his mother. It's just that we don't accept elevating him above a certain level, like others are putting him down in a way that we don't also accept. So we are like in between two factions: Christians who made Jesus a deity and Jews who made Jesus something bad. I don't want to say what they say about him, Sami. So we don't accept both.
I understand. That's fine. I mean, I go by, I can use the historical critical method to evaluate what the earliest manuscripts say about Jesus. And the earliest manuscripts we have are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And technically Paul's letters. Paul's letters are actually earlier. But again, I mean, to think about this, does this sound genuine to you? If I said to you, Paul was a Muslim because he prayed with his face to the floor, would you accept that?
No. It depends on his creed also. No. I'm not saying so. By the way, I'm not telling Christians to become Muslim because Jesus fell on his face in prayer. No, but he said, he said, pray to the Father. He said, pray as you see me praying. He himself prayed. How can God pray? He cannot be a God and pray. Well, there's a lot of things here. Anyway, you know what? It looks like I'm going to make a video. I stopped talking about Christianity, but it looks like because of you, only for you, for your eyes only, I'm going to make a video. That will convince you to take Shahada online with me one day.
Well, I hope one day. Oh, did you say that you said you went to a Catholic school? Were you Christian at some point, or
no?
So you always been a Muslim?
No. Half of the students or more were Muslims in Egypt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, Catholic, not Orthodox, because most of the Egyptian Christians are Orthodox, but that was a Catholic one.
Yeah, they would be Coptic Orthodox. Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, but those were Coptic Catholics, and I'm a Coptic Muslim, by the way. The word Copt does not mean Christian. The word Copt means Egypt, Egypt, Al-Copt. So Copt means it's from Egypt. You know what? Even Moses talked the Coptic language. That was like how many years before Jesus was born? A lot, centuries, right? So the word Copt means Egyptian. Egypt. Yeah. So I have a book, by the way. I have a book. I have a book called Coptic Muslims Before Muhammad. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. Coptic Muslims, Aqbat Muslimun Qabla Muhammad. And it was the bestseller in Egypt in 2010 in the book fair. And it's not yet in. I'm thinking of translating it to English, but I have it on a video. I'm explaining because my master's thesis was about Arianism. I proved.
Oh, really?
Yes. I proved that Arianism is Islam before the birth of Prophet Muhammad. And I proved that it is the untold history of the world. And if you don't understand Arianism, there's a lot of things in history that you will not understand about the Roman Byzantines, about Islam itself. things even in the seerah of Prophet Muhammad itself, you will not understand why did he want peace with Quraysh that much. Yeah, because he was a man of peace. No. As soon as he made peace truce with Quraysh, he sent 4 armies to the north. It's not because he wanted to make a truce and to make sure that the southern front is safe, because he's gonna fight the strongest country in the world, the Roman Byzantine. Why is that? Because at that time they were killing the Aryans like goats. The books of history say that 500 Egyptian Aryans joined the army of Amr ibn al-As in conquering Egypt. Egyptian are, yani it's like about 1/6 of the army of Amr ibn al-As were Aryans, Egyptian Aryans. It's mind-blowing. Aryanism is a history that needs to be understood, because they were vilified.
The only thing I have to add to this is Aryanism will not be compatible with Islam. Aryanism would still affirm things that would be pragmatic to the Islamic doctrine. You could, as long as you get that, that's fine.
No. I don't get that. No. My masters is proving that this is not true, because everything written about Arius was written by his enemies, and the enemy, actually, no, the conqueror writes history. So he writes himself Orthodox, and he writes the other as a heretic. But maybe the truth.
You got to be careful. You got to be careful there, though, because Islam also writes a lot of what we know about the Jalalian period, right? The period of ignorance. There are very few resources that survive from that. It's actually Islamic writers that tell us about it. So, you got to be careful, because there has to be some sense of objectivity, and I think there is. I think that Arius's ideology was well understood because it persisted for quite a long time. It was a heretical aspect of the church. So we know what they believed, and we know that people, because we have letters of people arguing, bishops from the church writing to other people who were heretical, who were Arians, and saying, you think X, Y, and Z, this is wrong because of X, Y, and Z. But again, ultimately, so for example,
my master's thesis proved that everything heretical about Arius came from Athanasius' book and from others who were against him. But things that are bits from here and there, you find that Arius' creed is very, very similar to Islam. The problem is you cannot get his creed except from the students of Arius, who will show you I'll tell you something. Look at the Unitarians today, and we all know that the Unitarian church is like the spiritual descendants of the Arians. The Unitarian, they believe in Jesus as a teacher, fully.
Yeah, you can make a claim for that, sure.
Excellent.
But Arians. Okay, so you know that the Council of Nicaea, right? This is where Arius was brought to defend his position, and there were according to our history, there were 318 bishops that were present there. 316 condemned Arius.
No, don't condemn.
So you're talking like more than 90. Yeah, they voted. Over 90% said that Arius's beliefs about the fact that the Son was not eternal.
Among them are Arians, because they were afraid, because at that time there was a lot of violence. And they said a little bit of ink in a signature it's much better than my own blood. Among the people who voted against Arianism is what's his name? The Bishop of Nicomedia, who is the famous Arian who baptized Constantine on the Arian Creed. So he was Arian, and said he voted like that because he was afraid. Anyway, we're now confusing the audience. We're not confusing the audience, and it's time for sahur. People who will not eat now are not gonna eat for 48 hours. So we have to end somehow, somewhere. So do you have anything else to say?
Sure. I guess we could just summarize, and call it a day. I'm more than happy to do another live stream.
Hopefully, inshallah. Maybe we can get together also after Ramadan and have a coffee, and then we can also do more, inshallah, if we want. Yeah. We just need people to know that you can differ with each other in a friendly atmosphere. You don't need to shout at each other. At the end, Allah will judge between us on Judgment Day. We can differ and have a coffee. You understand me? We don't have to agree at the end. Of course, I would love that you become Muslim, and you would love if I become Christian. This is definitely okay. But what exactly is going to happen? That's in Allah's knowledge. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think this has been a really fruitful chat. I think that a lot has been affirmed here. I think a lot that many Muslims may not be familiar with. My real central point of difference here is I think it's difficult to establish that Muhammad said that these Qira'at would be 10. I don't think we can relate that back to Muhammad. I think that's an issue. I think the Qira'at is more likely better explained as just variations that have been caused by ever so slight diacritical changes in the Arabic. And when you showed the Arabic, I think that was quite clear how easy it would be to make these kind of variations. And yet, even the meaning may be quite different, but it's still quite easy to see how that could be an accepted reading. We don't have any real backing from Muhammad that says there should be 7 of these or 10 of these or 14 of these or however many. So just accept these as authentic Quran, I think, is not based in the Sunnah. And I would say it's a bid'ah, it's an innovation. But maybe you can go and you can find some stuff. Maybe I've missed the Sunnah. Maybe I've missed something.
This is your belief, and my belief is completely opposite to this. The Quran is fully preserved. All the Qira'at are from Prophet Muhammad. We have it by a chain of narration. And at the same time, it's mentioned in the hadith, like the hadith I mentioned of Lady Aisha, in which she said, I heard the Prophet reciting Farawhun wa Rayhan, Faruhun wa Rayhan, and many others, by the way. So there is, in the books of the Sunnah, there is a chapter for the Qira'at called Qira'at, by the way, and so on. So anyway, thank you very much, Chris. And I would love to thank
it was a pleasure talking to you.
Whether they came from my side or from your side. I just want you not to stop fighting with each other, shouting at each other. We can be friends and we can have a civilized talk discussing Aqidah out of love for each other, by the way. And thank you very much. Take care.
Absolutely. God bless you all.
Bye. Thank you.